OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
7:30, this is OTB AM. Eoin and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And we have got a cracker for you over the next little while. We're going to be joined by SEAMUS COLEMAN in the course of the next hour to chat about a certain new appointment at Everton and plenty more besides. We're going to have Roche with us as well. A fairly turbulent opening to the 2021 Tour de France. He's been watching, he's been sitting and viewing the disastrous scenarios in a number of different places over the past couple of days, so it'll be interesting to get his take on that. And we are also going to have Tommy Walsh with us a little bit later on to go through the arts of hurling. He's picked out 3 of his favourite skills and he'll be talking us through how he mastered them, and he'll be talking us through some of the great practitioners of some of those skills. Spoiler alert, high fielding will be one of those skills. It's a really great piece and it's coming up after 9 o'clock this morning. So plenty coming your way between now and then. You can tweet us at Off The Ball if you want to get in touch with anything that's on your mind. Ger, I had last night down as a night without any sport whatsoever, but you were hooked on Wimbledon.
Yeah, Andy Murray, like in various stages, like, that's it, he's finished. He's only got one hip. I mean, I presume everybody knows he's literally only got one human hip, and his other hip is completely bionic. And I'm not bionic in a, like, the Bionic Man, he's, you know, part machine. It's actually like a titanium hip that he had. Maybe people have seen the documentary, or maybe people heard Luke Keeney in studio with us last year talking about what happens where it's a very brutal piece of surgery, and the comeback is not supposed to allow you to reach anything like a previous level. And Andy Murray's been nowhere near his level. And yet last night, there were times, particularly when the game was on the line in the 5th set, where he'd fallen repeatedly. He'd, like, at one stage, he had done the splits and it looked like he'd ripped a groin. The fall was so bad and so spectacular that the umpire was down to see if he was okay within a split second. Like, she got off and legged it across and was like, "Are you still alive? Are you going to be able to speak?" And he got up, Lazarus-like, and won in 5 sets in dramatic fashion. And I mean, I know we've had Colin Booth here last year saying, "Oh, Andy Murray won a match. It's absolutely remarkable that he won this match. It's going to be one of the great achievements of his career." It's like, he keeps winning those matches. And I know it's the second round, right, against a qualifier. But, like, it was against a qualifier who could absolutely murder the ball. So, fairly sensational stuff. A crowd at Wimbledon, the tournament back. And I think, like, the reason that people really liked Andy Murray and really liked him at any point in his career was that he was capable of pulling stuff out. And he was chippy. And he talked to himself in a very aggressive way. But not his opponent, and not the line judge, and not the umpire. And I don't know, I think that, like, if you want to, if you were building a prototype modern sports hero, socially aware, arguing for equal pay, and also capable of making a great comeback from a horrific career-ending injury, then look no further than Andy Murray. I'm saying tune in, get on the bandwagon, Eoin. This might be only one more game.
You're saying that Novak Djokovic is no longer the GOAT and Andy Murray is straight in there. Let's just let's do this conversation again. Make people angry at 7:34.
If you were to pick one of these for your kids to bring home, it's no competition.
Does
Andy Murray made $64 million in his career. He's done all right.
He's done all right. Is Andy Murray the number 1 kid to bring home in world sport?
That's a very good question, Alan. I mean, I need to think about that. You know, like. Certainly, there's a conversation to be had there. I mean, I don't know.
The official power rankings of the nice guys in world sport, I think he probably would be right up there. I presume, like, I wasn't watching this last night, I presume Wimbledon was just rocking for every single point he made last night.
There's also a weird thing that happens where it gets darker in London earlier than it does here, or else they absolutely put a filter on the camera, because it looked like there was a bunch of people on the hill. I don't know if you want to, it depends on what age you are. It's the Henman Hill or the Murray Mound. And this is the area outside where people who can't get tickets sit and watch the tennis on a big screen. It was completely pitch black. Obviously, they'd put the roof on, so there was a delay in the middle of the game. when that happened, and yeah, it was. Look, it's high drama, you know, because like boxing is obviously the most tense and heightened high drama in sport, but in tennis, on every point, it's two people against each other. We don't really get that in that many other sports where, you know, second by second you get a restart and the tension ratchets up, particularly as you get towards the end, and everything then is like, oh, if there's a break here, it could be the last one. And the tension last night was glorious, and the quality of the tennis that he played as the match went on got better and better as well, which, you know, I mean, is it too much to ask for that he could have a Jimmy Connor style run to the final at this stage of his career? It probably is, but like, it's a weird post-COVID time. Who knows?
Yeah, like he said, the end was good, the middle part not so much. The atmosphere is amazing, crowd is amazing. I needed everyone's help tonight. They did a great job. Like, I mean, it does seem like, as Colin was talking last year, that every one of these wins feels like a Grand Slam victory. It feels like a trophy for Murray, which doesn't necessarily suggest that he is going to go and have this incredible run. But as you say, he's literally got half of his hips. So
yeah, there's a good chance Djokovic crushes him if he meets him. There's a good chance the next guy he's up against is like a 9th or 10th seed. Good chance he gets crushed, and like, it's, you know, it's all been completely pointless, because again, the exhaustion that he must feel having gone 5 sets this time and he went 4 sets last time, you know, that's something that his body won't be used to either. So I'm just saying, tune in.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's like another week and a half left of this, and it's amazing stuff. Especially
no Euros as well again tonight, as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure that there's no more Euros tonight. So this is your opportunity. This is your shop window, Wimbledon. It's also the shop window for a few other stories to come to the fore, Ger. I kind of felt like this was going to be one of the best compressed transfer windows as soon as the final of Euro 2020 happens and we all move on with our life. But Sancho swoop is a headline I see here. Sancho snapped up by Ollie, and then you have a couple of managerial appointments. You got Nuno Espirito Santo going to Tottenham Hotspur. At long last, they finally reached the bottom of the barrel, and they come up with a good manager, I think. I think this is, if we were talking about scraping the barrel and you come up with Nuno, I don't think it's the worst outcome. And then, of course, Rafa going to Everton. As I say, we're going to be joined by Sheamus Coleman very shortly to talk about that one. Which of these stories is the biggest story?
Well, I guess Jadon Sancho has the potential to change Manchester United's fortunes in some way. I think Sancho is underrated by followers of the Premier League at the moment because he hasn't played for England in this tournament. But I mean, I happen to think Jack Grealish could potentially be the tournament winner for England. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Jadon Sancho is much behind him. Like, Rafa going from Liverpool and ending up at Everton is a remarkable story. His love affair with the city was something that had been talked about repeatedly. And clearly he's looked at the situation at Liverpool and seen that even if Klopp goes for whatever reason, that he's now no longer going to be considered next in line because Stevie G has reached, in the popular imagination, I'm not saying Fenway are looking at Stevie G as the natural successor to Jurgen Klopp at the moment, which leaves what? Tranmere Rovers or Everton? What are you going to do? Go to one of these two? You've got to pick Everton. And if the opportunity arises, particularly because of the amount of money that's being injected into the club, when you think about the new stadium that they're building down in the Docklands, like, Liverpool's a football city, and he can do very, very good work there. Like, is it possible that he can get that team to be one of the teams that finishes fourth over the next few years? Would you be really that surprised if Benitez managed to build a team that was successful on the back of huge investment and his very specific style of play, which is incredibly hard to beat, or was to deliver some cup success? I mean, I think Rafa Benitez was still a good manager at Newcastle, and he proved that. So, but the Nuno story, like, what's going to happen at Spurs when Nuno won't have the Portuguese tap of talent? Like, what's Daniel Levy going to do? What's going to happen to Harry Kane? What does Harry Kane think of this? And I don't know. Like, is there a chance they could get Raheem Sterling and money for Harry Kane? Would you take that?
Yeah, I think as Nathan was saying yesterday, if that's your only option, if Kane going out the door is a certainty, then I think that's a good move for Tottenham. But I don't know if it's, I still don't I'm still not sure that's a good move for Raheem Sterling. I think after you come off the summer of your life, surely you're feeling confident that you can persuade a manager who's previously had a lot of trust in you to trust you once more. Okay, there have been tough times for them during the last season, but he picked him in the Champions League final. It may not have gone his way, but I think there is definitely a world where even if Jack Grealish joins Manchester City, that Raheem Sterling all of a sudden plays his way back into contention and to be a starter week in, week out for Man City, or at least in the big games. I'm not sure he's going to give up on his City success just so easily, because if it's just Sterling in exchange for Kane plus money, that is not a team who are going to challenge for a title at Tottenham. It is not a team who are guaranteed a top four. And as you say, like, what does happen to Nuno? I think it's a good appointment, but it's not a great appointment. I think that there were better managers out there that they obviously missed out on, but it's better than how it was looking at sometimes over the last 48 hours, which was before Scott Parker became Bournemouth manager. Could he be the guy? Does it go back to Ryan Mason? Like, that would have been disaster scenario for Tottenham. At least they've got a guy who's proven that he can take a club from a level and take them to a higher level. Now, of course, there was plenty of finance that helped that level to be achieved, but I think that the manager takes a lot of the credit as well, and I'm not sure this is a bad move at all for Tottenham.
Yeah, I don't want to prejudge, but remember, the Spurs ideals are very closely associated with good quality, free-flowing football and lots of goals. That's what the Tottenham way is supposed to be. Like, Harry Redknapp played that way. Terry Venable's Spurs played that way. Glenn Hoddle's team played that way. Ozzy Ardiles' team played that way. Although Danny Blanchflower, who is the genesis story, really, of the Spurs way, was one of the most gifted footballers of his or any generation. And you wouldn't really associate Nuno with free-flowing football and lots of goals, would you? No,
I guess it depends who he's going to have at his disposal. Like Wolves were a great team to watch when they were on the counter-attack, and they had that blistering ability to sit deep and kind of completely run the legs off you on the counter, and they obviously had the players to do that. They did at a good pace in certain areas, but like last season just was a bit of a nightmare for them on so many levels. But then again, they had injuries in certain departments. But it did seem like the whole project kind of flatlined a little bit for them last season, and whether or not that's actually down to the manager, I'm not so sure. Like, just to circle back to Rafa, I'd love to know the statistics from Football Manager as to how many people actually take over Everton as opposed to every other club, because it is the stereotypical exciting project that every manager wants. Like, they've, again, just been, if you're talking about flatlining, I mean, Everton have constantly been at that level where you feel they can make the breakthrough and maybe just haven't been able to do it in terms of, like, shattering that glass ceiling and getting into the Champions League places. So, like, it is your classic exciting project when you're talking about good players that a manager may have at their disposal. If Rafa Benitez has the same squad that Carlo Ancelotti had, he'll be confident of having an even better season than they did last year. And I'm interested in hearing from Coleman later as to how they actually sum up last season, because there were so many positive moments and it just seemed to not represent itself when it actually came to the final Premier League table.
Yeah, I think that they definitely started very well, and there was a clear fading off, and maybe that fading off was due to squad depth and the COVID circumstances last year. I don't know. It's very, very difficult to know. Maybe Carlo Ancelotti had run his course at Everton. I'm not sure. I think, Sheamus is going to say that it's up to the players to go out and represent week in, week out, because that's the point that he has consistently made when any of the Everton managers previously have been having trouble, and he's come out to defend them all and said that ultimately it's our responsibility as professionals to make sure that the club gets the results that we're paid to deliver. So, I think that maybe that's the level that the squad is at versus the investment in other squads, and they're achieving about right. That they're consistent, kind of between 6 and 12 position in the league over the last decade is essentially where a club with the level of money that they've pumped in should be. And it'll be interesting to see if Benitez can, convince some other global superstars who will allow them to kick on. Like, does he know who the next Fernando Torres is, who could completely galvanise a team and a city and turn the existing talent that they have into players who are even better. That's the challenge.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting one. So plenty happening on that front and plenty more to come, as well as we'll be chatting to Coleman about that very shortly. It is 7:45 on this Thursday morning. You're with us here on OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. As you can see, we've got Nicholas Roche on standby. We'll get to him in just a moment. The sports page is coming your way at 8:05 before SEAMUS Coleman at 8:15. John Duggan's Virtual Insanity then coming your way at 9:25. It is Irish Open week in the golf. Tommy Walsh then, that piece on the arts of hurling coming up at 10:09 before the TV picks, where we'll be talking about The Sopranos prequel at 9:15. And then Damien Delaney from last night's football show coming your way at 9:30. Now, Make-A-Wish Ireland are excited to announce a new family cycling event to run up until the end of August. The charity is asking the public to join ambassador and professional cyclist Nicholas Roche in cycling 250 kilometres during the month in order to raise funds to help grant wishes to seriously ill children. Participants can take part by bike, scooter, wheelchair or any set of wheels and log their kilometres over the course of the month, while encouraging friends and families to sponsor them. Those who raise over €250 will receive their very own custom medal. People can enter the challenge themselves, by the way, with their families, or also in small teams of friends or work colleagues as well. So plenty of ways to get involved, and those wishing to get involved in Wheels for Wishes can sign up now at makeawish.ie. It's a brilliant initiative, brilliant charity, and I'm delighted to say that Nicholas Roche is with us on the line. Good morning to you, Nicholas.
Good morning.
How are you getting on? How's life watching the Tour de France rather than being in it?
I have to admit, it's not as easy as I thought it would be. Well, the first few days when I was seeing everyone crashing left, right, and centre, I was quite happy I was watching it from the sofa. But the Tour is the Tour. It's always something special. It wasn't a surprise. It was something that was planned from the team. So from the start of the year, I know I wasn't programmed for the Tour. So the disappointment or the strategy of the team meant that it was not going to happen. And but still, although I knew about it, I was still waiting for some random email to pop in with my flight details. But that's the way it is. I'm looking forward to preparing the Olympics. I've been focusing on that, and that's also one of the reasons and the strategies of the team. So I'm trying to make the most of it.
Right. I was just going to ask, what were the other factors at play then in that decision that led to you not cycling in the Tour? So the Olympics was a big part of it.
Well, the Olympics was a big part, but it was also a gamble because, the selection was only made a couple of weeks, if not days ago. So when the team planned the whole calendar back in December, so some teams leave it until the selection point and they give you really, really on the last minute your qualification for the Tour or not. Like it's been, for example, like in AG Tour, if you remember in my first Tour, I got the call on the Monday morning after winning the championships on the Sunday that I was heading off to the Tour. This team works very differently. This team already tells you more or less in December your program, so as you can prepare accordingly to it. So the program was, they've signed Romain Bardet, a new GC rider for the team, and me being more a rider specifically adapted to be in support of these guys. He wanted to ride the Giro and the Tour of Spain, so the team prioritized me to be there in support of him in the Tour of Italy rather than in the Tour. This year's DSM Tour de France team is more orientated around the sprints. They have a full sprint train and they wanted to give their young, promising climber, Donovan, a go in the mountains and a bit of an experience. So I paid the price of that kind of strategy.
That's interesting. It doesn't leave much room for manoeuvre if you get into a good bit of form, for example, during the Giro, or do they leave that wiggle room for you?
No, they don't. There's teams that might. This one, like I said, is pretty... the good thing about it is once the plan is done, they stick to the plan. Okay. Unless something major happened, but I wasn't actually even in the reserve list for the Tour. One of the other factors was that I was really, really pushing to go to the Olympics. And that was something that the team wasn't quite ready. It was also part of the choices. So it's multiple things that make you have to make choices. And for me, at this stage in my career, the most important thing, I wanted to have another shot at the Olympics, go and represent Ireland for the fourth time. I thought that, I've done 11 tours or 10 tours, but I wanted just to give it a last. I could maybe do another Tour de France in my career, but there's fewer chances of me going to the Olympics again. So I really, really wanted to push myself and try and qualify or be selected for the Olympics and represent Ireland one more time.
Yeah, it's this amazing thing, I presume, and an amazing difference to one of, or any of the Grand Tours, really, going out representing your country. A less commercial event, obviously, for you, I presume, but still this unbelievably proud thing. So can you describe those differences between being an Olympic cyclist and obviously being a cyclist in the peloton at a Grand Tour?
Well, I was listening last night to one of Eddie Dunbar's interviews that he's done recently, or was a press release, and he was saying, when he speaks to the people back home in Ireland and say, oh, I rode the Giro, which was huge for them as a first Grand Tour. Actually, so did I back in 2007. People is like, oh, what's the Giro? When you say I go to the Olympics, everyone knows what the Olympics are. In cycling, people would relate cycling to the Tour de France, and that's about it, where everyone can relate to the Olympics. So I think in the world of cycling, the Olympics is not as important as the Tour or one of the other Grand Tours. And this is the full-on proof, is a lot of teams are actually not really happy that some of the riders are going to the Olympics, to the point where even some of the teams have banned riders of going to the Olympics because they said that the importance is to stick to the calendar the team has imposed them. I'm talking about, the bigger riders, as publicly said, for example, Alaphilippe, his team did not agree on him and going on in the Olympics, and he had to prepare for the second part of the year. So there are circumstances involved where, if you talk to the grand picture, to the grand media and the public, the Olympics remains one of the biggest events on the planet.
Yeah, for sure. So can we get into your emotions when you're watching on Saturday in particular, Nico? This is extraordinary. If you just talk about that first crash, what was going through your head when you witnessed what had happened in terms of that sign being held out and the entire peloton just collapsing?
Well, unfortunately, I think cycling has quite a short-term memory, and this has happened in the past. This time around was just bigger again. Many times I've been caught up in a crash because of a dog, and the same in the peloton, or someone stepping out with a camera phone, and there's 5 guys crashing, 10 guys crashing. This time around, it was the way the road was narrow, and the circumstances of the actual, that it was proper high speed at that moment, made that it was a proper disaster. I'm actually surprised that what is happening this year, that the Tour is going to take legal actions, has not happened in the past. Because if you think about it, for example, I take a very personal example. My own teammate who's abandoned, Jascha Sutterling. So he's also a rider who is out of contract at the moment and has played and was extremely happy to go to the Tour, because he knows that this could be a ticket into a team next year or a ticket into re-signing with this team. So he's been preparing for months for this contract. Now he's home with a broken hand after one day into Tour de France. So what does that mean on his contract? It's great that they're going to sue her 15,000 euros, but my mate might lose a couple of 100,000 euros for this crash because of his age, because of the circumstances, because there's no races. There wasn't too many races before the Tour de France, and there's not too many races after Tour de France, and it's still a short time for him to go into the Vuelta. So people think, oh yeah, it's a crash, blah, 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 blah. But no, actually, we play or in a way our lives or our career on certain events. And unfortunately, that's the case of Jascha, but it's also the case of a lot of the other riders. If you look at it, the other days, there was also incidents with just riders themselves. It's just the Tour is a Tour. There's always these crashes every single year. Last year, it was due to the bad weather in Nice. The year before is the stress of the crosswinds. But there's always something happening in the Tour, and that's the beauty and the stress of the Tour. You know that if you go to the Tour, what's important is to go through at least the first 4 or 5 days kind of unscratched or unwounded.
Will the cycling authorities listen to people like you, to any of the other cyclists talking? Will they look at the protest the other day and say, right, we need to change something here?
Well, yes and no, but what do? You can't really barrier the whole course. So, if you're in a stadium, it's easy. You just put a fence the way they've done in football pitches to stop the public jumping on the stadium, on the grass. But in the cycling races, they've already, in main in the last 2-3K of the climbs, they put barriers, but it doesn't stop people doing what they want, the 100K or whatever the distance is beforehand. So it's a little bit more complicated with just the structure of the race. For sure, I think if you start using someone as an example, and I think this lady will be an example, people might actually think of being a little bit more cautious, because until now, you see them running beside you, pushing you. Nibali also crashed down and abandoned, was it last year or the year before, because of a spectator on his camera. So every year there's an incident with a spectator that is big or small. So I think at this point, if we have a clear example, and it's like, all right, this is what's going to happen if you mess about, I think the public will eventually, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen between here and the Alps or here in the Pyrenees. You will still see people taking risks to get a shot on TV in some crazy costume. But I think people will get educated towards it, but it's going to take time. Like I said, unfortunately, as much as the organisers want, it's very difficult to put barriers everywhere.
Well, what's going through your head when you're making one of these big climbs and you see one of those people in a crazy costume, those people trying to get on TV? Because this is obviously the most famous moments when we see somebody invariably running beside one of the GC contenders. What do you think as a member of the peloton at that moment?
What an idiot. But no, I mean, when you're racing for victory, you're focused, so you're trying to not think about it, but it still is there, and you're just saying, please don't get closer, please don't get closer, please don't get closer, and you're kind of also focusing on the pace that's in front of you or behind you, or the riders around you in general. So it takes a lot of focus, but also a lot of distraction, and you're just kind of basically hoping that nothing happens. Because at that moment, if he trips or if he goes close to you, or sometimes when he tries to push you and he pushes you, like we've seen even in Zoncolan, where the guy wanted to push the rider and he touched the wheel of the rider in front of him and fell, and it cost him the victory. That was back in 2014. But it was quite dramatic. The poor kid, he was on his way to win the Zoncolan, and the fan tries to push him and slips, and it makes him touch the wheel of the guy in front. There was two of them. And then eventually he just completely clipped out, and the other guy just rode off and won a stage of the Giro. So I think we're one of the only sports where the fan interaction can actually have a significant change of the course of the race.
And then the other question I had was, what's going through your mind when you're in a situation like the one we saw on Saturday, for example, when you're in the middle of the bunch and you realise that this whole thing could go down like a pack of Skittles?
Yeah, so when you're on the ground, there's not much you can think about, and you try and assess your wounds and hope that is not bad enough that you can start again. So the first reflex is usually like, you know, when you try and get up. I imagine if you said I'm in the middle, I have a couple of guys or bike on top of me, so I'll try and kind of firstly assess if anything's broken, if I can move, concussion, no concussion, and then first reflex is usually you look for your bike and see if the bike is decent enough to try and go again. There's a moment where you know already if you're going to save the day and it's going to be a couple of minutes, or you know that's it, it's going to be 10, 15, 5 minutes or whatever it is. So kind of after a short time, you realize that, okay, that's it. That's, if I was a GC rider, you'd say, okay, that's it. I'm out of GC for now. I'm just going to save and try and get to the line as quick as possible. Or on the opposite, I'm completely out, and then riders will sit up and try and make it in the easiest way possible to the line, and think about getting ready already for the next day and not putting more pressure to the body.
Nico, that level of detail is amazing, I think, and it really helps people understand just how dangerous the fan interaction can be and how catastrophic it can be. Even the example you used earlier on of your teammate in the broken hand. In the context of that, Irish cycling fans have been very interested to see the row that has broken out between Sam Bennett and his team director. For you, watching something like that, what's that experience like as somebody who's in the peloton, watching somebody who you know have a very public evisceration from his boss?
Yeah, I think it's quite new, or if it's not new, it's been probably since Kelly and my dad's time that we didn't hear. And I think maybe not, because they would have kept things secret rather than have it so much in the media. So I think for our cycling fans or general public, because I think Sam today is more than a cycling star. He's a proper star in Ireland. So everything he says or does has just taken that more importance, and people just got more interested in the sport and in Sam as a character himself. To be honest, I only know what I read on the newspaper, and I've just seen these back and forth between accusations from Quickstep and Sam trying to justify himself on his initial pain and then on getting back into training. So it's very difficult with the elements that I have to kind of judge, but it is quite, I was going to say, interesting to see this clear accusation. And then, was it a decision that took him out of the Tour? But we also don't know if Sam really wanted to go on the Tour in these conditions. So there's a lot of unknowns in there. It's not just about two people having an argument. They could be, if you're not 100%, the Tour is the most brutal race of the year. Do you want to go? So I think that was a question that might have gone through Sam's head. But on the other hand, if you wanted to go and your team boss is not happy, it's also sometimes a game. Plus, that there's all these rumors of changing teams and all that. So there's a lot of politics involved. I have been taken off a Tour team because I wouldn't sign a contract to renew and I was leaving the team. So they just told me, I'm not going to put you in the Tour. So I know this scenario exists. So there's a lot of scenarios that exist. There's a lot of politics sometimes involved. It's not just about being strong and being capable of riding the Tour. And the teams make choices, but also riders, when they're strong enough, as in power-wise, they can also make choices. So I think for now it's still in the hot, and no one really knows, apart Sam and Lefebvre, what is really going on.
And is this common? Are we just aware of this story because it's Sam Bennett, or is it frequent that like a team director would go so public with such, like, in Ireland, the whole notion of accusing somebody of faking injury is very important, because that's what Roy Keane said happened to him in Saipan. So it's ringing a lot of bells for people, this story. But does it happen in other teams to the star rider from France or Spain? Is the situation unusual, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. It is very rare that it goes so public. You can always make, sometimes there's some kind of an allusion to it, or is not really said in such a direct way. But this time around, it is quite rare that the accusations are so straightforward. I don't remember. Okay, maybe it's the same. I'm also Irish cycling, Irish fan. I follow Sam since years, so maybe I'm more interested in the story because I follow Sam than if it was some random rider from a different team. But exactly what you're saying, I don't think it's something that happened that often. I don't recall any scenarios that were as vocal as this conflict over the last couple of years.
If Sam had been fully fit, do you think that he would have been in consideration for the Olympics team, or because of the course, was it always part of his plan really not to be part of the Olympics this year as well?
Well, that's the same. I talked with Sam last year, and I think at some point he had considered it. And then I think he was looking at the Tour, and there's a lot of things in for the Olympic, in the Tour, but then there's also all these races behind. So like I said, unfortunately for us, the Olympics is right in the middle of the season and at the peak of the season. So, in most sports, you go to Olympics and then that's it. It's 4 years work. You get to it and your time's off for a couple of months, a couple of weeks, and you can relax. Where for us, going to the Olympics requires quite some sacrifice in the preparation. So you would have to skip races before that. And also in the coming back, which means that it affects some of the other races coming after the Olympics, especially when a couple of months ago, the quarantine for Japan was over than 10 days. So this was a moment where a lot of the riders were kind of backing off, because how can you prepare for an Olympic race in the middle of July, doing 10 days in a hotel room, when you have to go back to the peak of the season when everyone's in altitude camps and riding the Tour de France, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of questions going in people's mind on, is it worth going to the Olympics or is it not worth going to the Olympics? Because to be honest, the Olympic medal is obviously achievable for everyone, but there's always realistically only a handful of riders who can say, I'm going to Olympics to win it. I'm going to Olympics to try and win it, but some riders are going there with a higher chance. And I think I wouldn't be surprising anybody. There is superstars in cycling. I'm going to go there, do my best, give my best for Ireland, represent the country as best as I can, but there are stronger riders. And so it's like, where do you place yourself along in the priority? For me, it was a priority. For Sam, was it a priority, knowing that the course is extremely difficult, but also not just the course is difficult, the situation of going to the Olympics, the loss of days of training pre the event, but also the traveling there and traveling back and racing straight afterwards. For example, most likely after the Olympics, I would be racing 3 days after the Olympics in Spain, right. Not at the Vuelta, another race in Spain. So the show goes on after the Olympics. So I'm not quite sure if Sam wanted to go, didn't want to go. A bit with the Tour. I haven't spoken to Sam openly about it since, so I can't really comment for him. But yes, I think the Olympic course would have been difficult for Sam. But then, did he want to go or not want to go? Because he also, it would have been also maybe an experience for him to try the Olympics. So definitely, I think for Paris, it'll be an amazing Olympics for him, and I see him one of the favorites for the Olympics in Paris. So, like I said, there's a lot of strategies going on, and I haven't had a conversation with Sam in a while now about it. So I don't know his point of view. I'm just kind of guessing around.
Really interesting.
I have one last question. And sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, go for it, Ger.
Well, my last question was about that relationship between the cyclist and his team and the international team. It seems it's a little bit like international football, where the teams don't really want you riding in, I don't know, maybe they do want the World Championships, but in the Olympics, because as far as I can make out, they still have to pay you guys, but they don't actually get their sponsors tag emblazoned on the national shirt. So is it that kind of relationship where there's a bit of tension? We don't really want you doing international stuff because we pay your wages week in, week out?
Well, in cycling is quite different because, international races will be just basically the World Championships. And now, since the last couple of years, the European Championships were sometime in August. The Olympics, obviously, it's once every 4 years. I agree with you a little bit. Just it's not about the pay salary. It's more about the risk of crashing, and the team paying you if you crash on an event for Ireland, for example. So if I go to the Olympics and smash myself and my season's over, I'm racing for Ireland, not for my team, and my team still has to pay me. So it's kind of a risk assessment more than anything else.
Really interesting stuff. When do you fly out, Nicholas? I presume it's because it's like one of the first events always, isn't it? So like the 24th,
yeah,
I think is.
So we'll be flying out on the 18th and 19th of July. So pretty soon.
You're hoping, I presume, that you're up against all Tour de France, worn out cyclists.
Well, once again, it depends on the teams. Like a lot of there's a few riders who are in the Tour. I don't think there's that many. Right. But look, on a personal note, one of the races where I always had one of my best performances was San Sebastian, which is the week after the Tour. So I guess this is the same timing as San Sebastian in a normal year. So a lot of riders come out of the Tour in different ways. There's riders who a week after get like a overcompensation and a peak of form, and there are riders who just on the opposite just go down. So the Tour is a 50-50. If you look once again at the example of San Sebastian, which would be exactly the same scenario as what's going on this year between Tour and Olympics, in the top 10 in San Sebastian, most likely there's 7 or 8 riders that are out of the Tour. So I reckon the Olympics might be similar. So sometimes it plays in your favor, but I played in the favor for me the last couple of years when I went to the Tour, but also know riders who come out of the Tour and just takes them that bit more time, and maybe that the real tiredness kicks back after 10 days, not after 1 week, because your body just keeps on going. It's a funny machine, and they all react even year to year in a different way, because obviously there was years when I was leader where you go a little bit more deeper than when you're a teammate, because obviously when you're a teammate, the last climb, you recover and you think about the next day. So every year is different, every rider is different, and every scenario is different. So it's kind of funny to see how some riders can actually get the strongest day a week after the Tour, and some riders probably have their worst day a week after the Tour. So it's going to be interesting in the Olympics. I still think riders who have ridden the Tour will have an advantage just because of the rhythm. There is no race in the world, no training in the world that can replicate the workload you're getting in the Tour de France.
Right. Well, very best of luck with it. Just a reminder that Make-A-Wish Ireland are excited to announce a new family cycling event to run up until the end of August. The charity is asking the public to join ambassador and professional cyclist Nicholas Roche in cycling 250 kilometres during the month in order to raise funds to help grant wishes to seriously ill children. Those wishing to get involved in Wheels for Wishes can sign up now at makeawish.ie. Nicholas Roche, great as ever to chat to you. Best of luck in Tokyo. We'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Nicholas Roche there on the line. Right, it is 8:10 on this Thursday morning. Still to come, we'll be chatting to Sheamus Coleman, we'll be chatting to Tommy Welch, we got our TV picks and much more besides. We'll take a quick break.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
They're up getting photos for the launch of some product, and I'm in there like I have a head like 50 pence and walking in.
Never do a gig with it's never going to end well.
Who walks in? It was like, you know, them slow-mos when the doors open and this Greek god just walks through the door, and I'm like...
Tom Cruise.
Like pasty white, head on me like a size 6, and it's just joy walks through. So that was a demoralising day. But
download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for a full range of markets on shots on target, assists, passes and more on every match of the Euros, all powered by Opta. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports, this is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
You're welcome back. 8:12 on this Thursday morning. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We'll have a look at some of the back pages this morning. We'll start with OTB Sports. As ever, Virtual Insanity. John Duggan's golf tips for the Rocket Mortgage Classic is where he's focusing. And then he's also got another Virtual Insanity, but for the Irish Open. Ronan O'Gara then has been talking about Conor Murray's captaincy for the Lions. He'll be under the pump big time, he says, if things don't go well at the start. And in Tottenham, finally bag a new manager as Nuno Espirito Santo signs, and United agree to sign Sancho from Dortmund. So that is the OTB Sports homepage. The Irish Times leads off with the golf. Philip Reid, positivity abounds as Larry bids for glory. Aim taken at second Irish Open title, this time as a professional. And McDowell searching for his mojo. Instead of retracing his steps to past glories, he's looking forward to find form. Rafa Benitez is the big story across most of the back pages. The Irish Daily Star, you'll ever walk alone, is their headline. They've also got the other two football stories covered as well. Finally, a new boss at Spurs and Sancho's snapped up by Ollie. The Irish Daily Mail goes with Sancho swoop. United secure Dortmund star for £72.9 million on 5-year deal. And also a picture there of Rory McIlroy in conversation with DJ Carey and Johnny Sexton at Mount Juliet at the Pro-Am. And spectator limit increased to 500 from Saturday is the latest on the crowds and trying to move towards capacity crowds in Ireland. The London Times, now goals will flow for Kane, says Gareth Southgate. Henderson and Mount considered for recalls, and City vow to keep England goal hero Sterling. Sancho to join United in days, as we've mentioned, and Nuno, the new Spurs manager. Another picture from Mount Juliet on the back of the Irish Independent. It's Desi Farrell this time. Desi back in the swing after ban. He will be on the sideline at Chadwick's Wexford Park this Sunday as they go and they begin their quest for the 7 in a row. Harrington, I'd take a Ryder Cup over an Open win, he says, and picking Wonderful Murray as captain, a hell of a risk. That is John Robbie, who is saying that about Conor Murray in the Irish Independent. The Guardian goes with Harry's game. Kane ready for his Euro 2020 liftoff, says Southgate. The Mirror then goes with Blue Rafa Benitez, the new Everton boss, and two men great off the tee is their caption to accompany the photograph of Rory McIlroy and Johnny Sexton. Desi Farrell there on the back of the Irish Sun. back in the swing of things is their headline there as well. And Jadon Mancho. Top of the morning to you, Ger? Can we go with? Yep. Yeah. United finally land £73 million sensation from Dortmund. The Herald dubs can adapt to losing stars. Former Kingdom ace believes champions still have leaders. That is Declan O'Sullivan. We'll have him on tomorrow morning show here on OTB AM. The Irish Examiner. History repeated. Lowry eyes more Irish Open glory. Tommy Martin, then. It has recently become apparent how much I love Ukraine. It's a great piece we're digging out this morning. The Daily Telegraph. Southgate is facing selection dilemma over yellow cards. England could leave out key players for Ukraine match. Maguire, Rice, Phillips and Foden all risk missing semi-final if they get booked against Ukraine. So that is the back pages at the moment. A couple of comments coming in. Shifty Lad says, brilliant having Nico on. He really is great at writing and descriptions. I have his book, Great on the Road Captain. Could be medaling in Olympics. Now, lads, preparation is the key. Best of luck. And then Fergus, Ger. Going back to yesterday, very disappointed in Ger banging on with his post-colonial inferiority complex nonsense, I agree, while completely ignoring the disgraceful booing of the German anthem by the English.
I will in future get a checklist of stuff that Fergus wants me to be angry about, and I will pass it for consideration by Fergus before we come on air, and I will make sure that I play the hits that Fergus requires to give his post-colonial inferiority complex a good scratch.
I think what Ger is experiencing, Fergus, is an inferiority complex in reaction to the post-imperial inferiority complex. I think that's what's happening here.
Very meta, yeah.
Yeah, it's just sort of the clutching at the idea that we can't independently analyse England without some sort of cultural significance to our analysis.
I mean, that's a good point there you just made on.
Maybe it's not. Maybe we can't independently analyse. Like, are you going to be like hanging from the rafters in your house if Ukraine do the job against England at the weekend?
No, I won't. I'm a fully signed up member of the Jack Grealish fan club as a Villa fan. That's it.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. Like, and what about the rest of it? So if you took Grealish out of it, would that change things? Is this? Are you just living life for Jack Grealish right now?
Well, the thing is, anybody who's asked me what do you think is going to happen, I was like, I think England are going to win this. And now that it's coming close to fruition, I'm torn between the wanting to seem like a savant in front of those people that I've said this to, and also like, ooh, did I somehow manifest destiny here? Should I have decided, no, that's not what I want to happen? I don't know. It's a curious power that has been bestowed upon those of us who have said, I think England have a good chance of winning this.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's going to be a fascinating weekend. Like, I mean, tomorrow night's action obviously is like the absolute peak of it, and that Belgium versus Italy game, I think a lot of people are looking at tantalisingly. It is a fantastic lineup of sport in general across the weekend. We're going to have plenty of it covered as well this morning. We're going to be joined by Tommy Walsh, who will properly whet the appetite for the Hurling Championship, properly kicking into gear this weekend after the first couple of games last weekend. But at 8:18 on this Thursday morning, going to let you know that Spar Better Choices ambassador and father of two, Sheamus Coleman, is with us on the line. The Republic of Ireland and Everton captain today launched Spar's Better Choices Summer 2021 campaign, bringing healthier food and refreshment options into homes, gardens and parks for all the family to enjoy this summer. Spar has also created a specially curated online hub at spar.ie/better choices, providing customers with delicious recipes and suggested shopping lists to make planning for staycations, barbecues and match nights in simple, healthy and tasty. Available now in more than 400 Spar stores across Ireland. Spar Better Choices products are easily identifiable by the green sticker. Sheamus, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you getting on?
I'm very good, thank you.
The Rafa Benitez news, where does that register for you? Are you delighted and excited about what the season now brings?
Yeah, listen, it's been a interesting summer in terms of losing the manager, and then there's been a few weeks while we've waited for the news on the new manager, and I know obviously I've been around the club long enough to know, and I'm aware of supporters who know of the manager's history, but I think now as a group of players, as a group of supporters, staff members, I think ultimately we want what's best for Everton, and to get what's best for Everton, we all need to come together now and look forward to the new season. And unfortunately, I've probably been having these talks too many times recently because I think as a club, the manager situation has been changing a lot, and that's probably never a good sign. We've lost some managers along the way, which has been disappointing. But I think now, as a group, as supporters and players and staff members, we need to all come together and be as positive as possible and hope for a positive season, because there's been kind of too many seasons that have just kind of dwindled out, and we need to get that right.
Yeah, how big a factor is that, the history that you mentioned there of Rafa Benitez being a former Liverpool manager, previously describing Everton as a small club? How important is that to get out in front of that at the very start and to show that everybody's on side?
Well, ultimately, you've got to understand, big Everton supporters and that rivalry between Everton and Liverpool. But on the other hand, the decision is made. The manager has managed Liverpool, but in the meantime has been on to manage a lot of different clubs in between. And as players and staff, we need and want what's best for Everton Football Club. And as I touched on, there's been too many seasons that have just dwindled out, which has been disappointing. And, that's on me and a lot of the players, me as captain the last couple of years, to watch seasons dwindle out has been a massive disappointment. But now, we're ready to go again. We all have to come back. We all have to come back and impress the new manager and make sure that we're in his plans come pre-season and come the start of the new season as well. Because ultimately, like I keep talking about, but I'm not embarrassed to say it, we want what's best for Everton Football Club. We want to be successful, Everton Football Club, and I'm sure fans are sick hearing me saying it, but I'll keep saying it until the day I kick my last ball for Everton Football Club. We want to win a trophy at that football club, and this is a new start for us all again, and a new opportunity. And the manager has come to be successful as well. He's come to work for Everton Football Club, be part of the Everton family, and give his all, because he'll ultimately want to be as successful as he can as well. So as a group, we all need to look forward and be as positive as we can.
Is there a new deal on the cards on the table for you soon?
Is there what, sorry?
Is there a new deal on the table for you soon, Sheamus?
I've been talking to the club over the last little while, and listen, I'm in no panic. I'm not knocking down any doors to sign any deals, and I mean that in the best possible way. With respect to Everton, I'll come in and I'm really happy there and work hard like I did from when I came over as a 20-year-old. Nothing's changed, and I want to get every last ounce of energy that I have left in me and play as long as I possibly can, and we'll see where that brings. But yeah, I've been speaking to the club, and we'll see where we go from there. And ultimately, I just want to go back. I'm only thinking of pre-season, really, going back and working as hard as I possibly can and trying to impress and make sure I'm in and around the plans come next season.
Is it true that there might be a coaching element to your next deal? I saw that touted by people in the hierarchy at the club.
Well, listen, I think people are aware that I'm doing my coaching badges at the minute, and I don't want to be a player that finishes playing football and kind of doesn't know what's next. I think it's important as a footballer that you keep developing, even more so as you get older in your career. And I know you have David Myler in there with you doing media work and things like that. I think it is important that the players have a plan for after football. I am doing my badges. It's something that I don't find a chore doing. Badges is something that I really enjoy. And wherever that brings me in the future, we'll see. But I don't expect, just because I've played for Everton for 10, 12 years, that I should walk into a job at that football club. I think in life you've got to earn things, and just because I've played at a high level for Everton as a player doesn't mean I deserve to go in there as a coach. So ultimately we'll see how good I am as time goes on and see where that takes me. But yeah, it's something that I'm definitely interested in.
And Seamus, is that coaching or management? Because obviously they've become very, very different things over the last, even since you would have noticed the change, that there's a lot of managers who are on the coaching field every day, and there are managers who are sitting back and kind of almost CEOs in one respect. Which side of that appeals to you more?
I think for me, you do have to tie a bit of both of them together. Really, I think it is important that you're on the training ground and getting involved on a daily basis. But ultimately, I'd like to see myself as a manager, I suppose. I think it's not like being a captain, but as a captain, you do have to worry about, not just yourself, but everyone else. But I think there's similarities there. Obviously, being a manager, it's a lot more time consuming, but I think there's similarities there, and it's something that we'll wait and see. It's something that at this moment in time, I think I would like to do. And again, I'll touch on, it's not something that just because you played at a decent level that you can walk into and deserve it. You've got to start on the ground floor and work your way up, and we'll see where that brings me. Maybe I'll not be good enough, but I'll give it my best opportunity when that time comes. But on the other hand, I'm 32. I'm not 36. So we'll see how we go.
We're not writing you off yet. Yeah.
No, not this time.
And because is this a new thing, Sheamus, or is it kind of over the last couple of years? Do you think where the penny has dropped that this is what you want to do?
No, I done my coaching badges there. I started my B license a couple of years ago. Listen, I've always loved football. It's all I know really. Played it for so long, and watched games on the TV. Kind of started to notice I was taking an interest in what managers were doing. I was speaking to people around the club about why would we be doing this and why would we be doing that, just out of curiosity. Why that training drill and this training drill, just a bit of a football geek really. And as the years have went on, I've applied for my A license, and I'm nearly finished that now as well. So it's something, just I think as time went on, I've realised it's something that I would maybe like to do. And I do have a serious longing for home as well. I do, when I come home to Ireland in the summer, I do love being around Killybegs. I do love being around my family. So I'm doing it now, but I don't know what the future holds as well.
When it comes to that sort of element of things, Sheamus, when you're kind of trying to feel your way around on that front, are you having conversations with managers at Everton? Do you talk to Carlo last season, for example, and say, listen, I'm doing my badges, and are you trying to glean things off some of the great coaches you've worked under?
Yeah, listen, you build relationships with these managers, and just whether it be time on the training ground or upstairs in the canteen after, you try and learn from their experiences, ask them questions. Sometimes they come to you and talk about their experiences, their thoughts on management, how their careers have went. And, I'm all ears. I'm eager to listen, eager to learn. And I we talk a lot here, about the next step. But ultimately, I'm as hungry as I've ever been to be a football player. I come in every day as hungry and as eager as I did when I was 20 years of age, and trying to impress the manager like I was still a 20-year-old kid, because I think at my level you've got to prove yourself every day, and nothing's a given. So listen, we're talking here about the next stage, but ultimately I'm still in the moment and still loving being a footballer, and want to give that as much as I possibly can, but with an eye on the next stage, because I think you'd be very naive not to be planning for life after football, because I think you see a lot of people after football, they have no plan, and it can be a tough time for them. So I just want to be as bestly prepared for whatever comes next.
Have you been watching much of the Euros?
I've been watching it. I've tried this summer to, I've got my 3 kids back home with me and my wife, and our house is between my parents and my wife's parents, and we've been spending a lot of time just driving up and down the road with kids that wanting to go different places all the time. So a lot of my summer has been spent with the kids and kind of fulfilling their needs, than sitting and watching 3 different games a day. But I've been trying to watch the games that I wanted to watch, and but ultimately this summer has been about switching off really from the season just gone, and spending as much time with the family as possible really.
So you're spending a good bit of time at home and actually reconnecting with home over the course of the summer then?
Yeah, I've been home since we left international. Well, I left a few days early. Since we left international camp, I've been back in Killybegs, back in Donegal, and just catching up with with friends and family. I done my 5-day test and release. I need to make sure I get that as well, because we do all need to make sure that we're still sticking to whatever guidelines are in place. So I made sure I'd done my 5 days test and release, and just been with friends and family and really enjoying it.
Is that something you think about during the season, Sheamus, or is it only really when the season ends and you got a bit of time to think about it, about going home? I mean, like, is it something that you do constantly miss? Because you've mentioned it a few times, and there's clearly a really deep, strong connection between yourself and your home place.
There's a very strong bond between myself and home. It's where I grew up. It's where my family are. It's where my friends still are. Luckily in England, I've got my wife and my kids and football, and that's what I say. My life is very simple. It's family first, football second, and there's not much after that really. That's my life summed up in two. So coming home is important to me. I think especially after the 18 months maybe that we've all had. Not just me, people all around the world. It's been a tough time for everyone, but it's been 12 months since I was home last, so you do cherish every minute, and I think it's important to enjoy getting home. It's where I grew up, and it's something that I really enjoy.
When it comes to some of those matches you're watching in the Euros, then is there a strange emotion to it in some way, Sheamus? Are you thinking, I wish I was there, or are you thinking, I'm just watching a football match here and I've removed myself from it?
No, you'd definitely be thinking, I wish you were there, and you'd be having memories of Ireland, Italy that time, that big moment we had in France. But listen, I'm sure there's other players in other countries across Europe that are feeling the same thing, and we wish we were there. I'm sure all the players wish we were there, but it wasn't to be. And again, that's the ups and downs of football. It wasn't to be, and I sit back now and enjoy maybe the last few games from the quarterfinals on, but definitely has that sense of wishing we were there.
You're in a great position to tell us then, Sheamus, is football coming home?
You're not getting any headlines off me. I don't know. They done really well. England done really well in the game against Germany. I thought maybe people had an opinion that they were set up defensively because they changed to the 3 at the back and with the wing backs. But I watched the game. I thought they were solid, and I think Jordan Pickford, who has his criticism from people. I think everyone needs to hold their hands up and appreciate how well he's done for England this summer. I think he's been fantastic for them, and as a club mate, it's been good to see. So it's going to be an interesting end. England have got I suppose a favourable side of the draw, but me being a professional football player and knowing the ups and downs of football, England won't be thinking that. They know that football is a tough sport, and anyone on their day can upset you. So I'm sure they'll be fully prepared. But I thought Italy have been very good as well. I'm sure they've impressed a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But England have impressed so far, 4 games with no goals conceded.
Tell us about Raheem Sterling and why he's had such a good tournament. You've obviously come up against him. What is it about his skill set that makes him able to explode into games the way he's been doing over the course of this tournament?
I think I've played against him numerous times. He's fast, he's tricky, he's stronger than probably people would expect when they see the size of him. He's extremely strong, and I think he's I don't know anything about Sterling in terms of what he's like as a person, but from the outside looking in, he looks like an extremely hungry footballer who really wants to succeed, and I think you can see that with the way he's played in the summer so far, and how determined he's looked, and he's been very important for England. But listen, he's a £50 million player from Liverpool, so he was always going to kick on, and I think with the manager at Man City, his game on, I suppose, another level, and he's been fantastic for Manchester City and took that form on to England as well.
Has that sort of player you've noticed changed down through the last 10 years or so, Sheamus, where they like to play a little narrower, or they're hugging the touchline just a little bit less? Is that something you've noticed?
Yeah, listen, the game's changed a lot from maybe when I came over first. You had majority of the time a left-footed winger, maybe hugging the touchline, and you knew for the game that, you would have an overlapping fullback, but you usually had that winger, and that was your concern. But Yeah, now especially I think when you play against the likes of Man City, it's very difficult to know where to be. It tends to try and suck you in, narrow inside, so that there can be an overlap in fullback and overload areas with 3v2s and things like that. So the game has definitely changed a lot. I think managers and coaches have all got better. They've all got tactically better, which in turn makes it more difficult for the players that are playing to defend against these things. But definitely seen a big change like that. When I came over first, you knew who you had. You had a left winger, and it was kind of you v him. Whereas now, it's changed a lot. It's more complicated and more difficult, and players are getting, in my opinion, they're getting faster, stronger, probably better than ever, and the game is definitely improving, getting tougher year on year.
How have you adapted to that?
Like there's no secret. Just work hard, and for me, understand your weaknesses, understand what you need to improve on. I think people will tell you that have worked with me, I've got no ego. If I'm weak at something, I'll try my best to work at it. But yeah, you've got to adapt, or else, you wouldn't have, me myself personally, I wouldn't have stayed at this level for as long as I have, because you have to adapt, because the game's changing all the time, and I'm not getting younger, I'm not getting faster or anything like that. So I've had to adapt, but just through, I suppose, being a student of the game and having my homework done before games and working hard on a daily basis to make sure I can stay as fit as I possibly can. So no big massive secret to it, no big secret to my career so far. Hard work, determination, and that's it, really.
It's interesting seeing Kyle Walker play so well on the right of a 3 for England. I know he's done it for a long time, but it was nothing new the other day. I presume from your standpoint, looking at that, you're thinking to yourself, that's kind of the level you need to be at as a right back, where you can play on the right of a 3 as a right wing back on the right of a back 4. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think you need to be adaptable. I think the game's changing that much. Tactics are changing. Last year for Everton, I played right back, and I played 3 international games right of a 3 for Ireland, which I really enjoyed. I played some games going back to my early days under David Moyes. I played some games right midfield again, which I enjoyed as well, but I don't think I'll be making a career for myself right midfield at 32 years of age. But yeah, you have to be adaptable, and for me, listen, you're probably sick hearing the type of character I am, but for me, team comes first. The manager asked me a few times to play advanced of a right back and an actual flat back 4 of a right midfield, but ultimately I want to do what's best for the teams that I play for, and I think that's so important that you're a team player. I know there's some individual players that can win a game themselves, and we need to carry them types of players as well at times, but for me, I'm a team player, and I think it's important to be that, and that's what's kind of helped give me the career I've got as well.
Just going back to Jordan Pickford, it is amazing how brilliant he's been during this summer, and I guess probably what you'll say is that the criticism of Pickford or wherever that's coming from has just been totally unfair throughout the season. You've seen up close how good he is in training. Has he been criticised too heavily in the past?
I think Jordan knows, and we all know, has been for years, when you're England's number 1, there's severe pressure. There's always a media opinion on whoever's not the number 1 at the time, or whoever's doing well or upcoming, that's like, oh, they should be England's new number 1. So Jordan's had to show immense strength to kind of get on with his job, don't listen to the noise, and I think he's done that extremely well. But yeah, I think if anyone that's been watching Everton, especially the last few months of the season, would say that Jordan's been fantastic. He's got great quality with the ball at his feet. I think we've seen in the Germany game, he's a great stopper as well. So he looks extremely focused at the minute. He's calm, and I think he should be very happy with how his tournament's going so far. And as I said, when you're England's number 1, when you are in that position, there'll always be someone wanting to get your position, and there'll always be someone with an opinion that someone could do it better than you. So Jordan's been incredible with his character and with his performances to show people why he's England's number 1, and I think he's doing that.
Were you watching Portugal the other night, taking notes on how to beat them in September?
Sorry, no, I didn't see any of the Portugal game the last night, but yeah, listen, before I go into any international game or any club game, I've got my homework done on the opposition, or especially the players that might be in my position that I might be up against if I do play. But yeah, it's something that we have to prepare for. I thought the summer just gone was positive in terms of, you know, results. I know it's been a tough start for us, but no, it's been a positive summer. I think we got new players in the camp, which has been good, and now we're looking forward to meeting up again in September. And as you know me at this stage, it's always a privilege putting on that green shirt, and that'll be something that I'll be looking forward to again. All right, well, Sheamus, enjoy the rest of the stint in Donegal, and best of luck under Rafa and for the season ahead. Thanks very much. All the best. Cheers, Sheamus. Just a reminder that Spar Better Choices ambassador and father of two, Seamus Coleman, was on the line there. The Republic of Ireland and Everton captain was launching today Spar's Better Choices Summer 2021 campaign, bringing healthier food and refreshment options into Irish homes, gardens and parks for all the family to enjoy this summer. Spar has also created a specially curated online hub at spar.ie/better choices, providing customers with delicious recipes and suggested shopping lists to make planning for staycations, barbecues and match nights in simple, healthy and tasty. Available now in more than 400 Spar stores across Ireland, Spar Better Choices products are easily identifiable by the green sticker. Right, it is 20 to 9 on this Thursday morning. Delighted to be joined by John Duggan. John, how are you?
Eoin and Ger, how are things?
Good. Nuno, give us your satisfaction rating out of 10.
7.
7.
And it is a situation where I think Nuno is a good manager. Like, he did well at Wolves, he got them promoted. They were 7th in successive seasons at the Premier League level. We know that he is Jorge Mendes' first ever player. So there's a link there with Portugal. And he's going to be working under Fabio Paratici, who's the new MD of football at Tottenham. So Daniel Levy likes this guy, did business with him. He did very well at Sampdoria and Juventus. But I'm thinking of, if you're thinking about Harry Kane, is Harry Kane going to be jumping up and down with excitement about maybe changing his mind about wanting to leave the club and play for Nuno Espirito Santo? I would say the answer to that is probably no. Therefore, if Kane is sold, and I expect he will be, what do they do with the 100 million? Do they waste it as they did after Bale left, or do they spend it on really good players that they can build a new team around with Nuno, who's only signed a 2-year deal? It's been a managerial circus trying to get people in like Conte and Fonseca and Pochettino, those links there as well. My concern with Tottenham is they've done so well under Pochettino, but I think they've regressed as a football club. I think as a business they're brilliantly run, but I'm not so sure if they're that well run from a football side. And they were 2nd in 2017 in the Premier League. Are they anywhere near 2nd now? No, they're not. And how long would it take them to get back to that level? Many years, I would think. So I wish Nuno well, but I think he's got an uphill task ahead of him.
Sterling and that move with Harry Kane, John, how realistic is it? How much would you love to see it?
I'd love to see it. I think Sterling's an excellent player. He's one of the top players in the world, really. I don't know what's happened with him and Pep, but Raheem Sterling buzzing around and running at defences. He's from London. Obviously, he started at QPR with his career. So I don't think he wants to leave Manchester City, but if he did end up with Spurs, I'd love to see him play. Like, he's been the best player England have had.
He certainly has, and this is sort of summer that could like properly kickstart him into next season as well, which I think could actually just be part of him maybe giving Pep a second thought about maybe getting use out of him, even if they make a Grealish signing next season. John, it is a massive couple of days in golf. Should we get into virtual insanity?
Yeah, why not? The Irish Open is underway at Mount Juliet in Kilkenny, so 156 players. Only 4 of the world's top 50 are here. So we got Rory McIlroy, Tommy Fleetwood, Christian Bezuidenhout and Shane Lowry involved. Lowry's part is opening couple of holes. A load of players on 1 under par. I think Rory's going to win this week. I'd be surprised if he's not. I mean, look, he's a class act in the field by some distance, and he's playing well, and he's happy with his game. He's 5 to 1. I think he's going to win. I put him up on Virtual Insanity on OTB Sports. Parkland courses are Rory's ballpark. Won at the K Club in 2016. Has been happy with his game now, working with Pete Cowan. Won of the Wells Fargo Championship back in May, and played well at the US Open. Didn't win, but was in contention to win. And it wasn't the terrible choke that I would have sometimes associated with Rory in majors. I actually thought he was quite resolute at times. Did falter to a degree on the final round, but I did think he played well. And I saw enough positives in that for Rory at a Parkland course at 4 par 5s. The yardages are gettable. I think Rory McIlroy is a clear favourite. The other lads have gone for, a couple of whom are out already. Lucas Herbert at 33 to 1. I put him each way. The Australian, he's level par through 5 holes, has been in the top 20 in a couple of times in the States won the Dubai tournament, the Dubai Desert Classic last year. He's only 25 years of age, Lucas Herbert, an Australian. I think he's going to have a good future in the game. And he was in the top 10 in the Irish Open at Galgorm Castle last year, Lucas Herbert. So I've gone for him each way. He's only started probably moderately, given there are players under par. Thomas Pieters is out this afternoon at 45 to 1 for a few bucks each way. The Belgian, another big hitter. I think, once again, if he can take advantage of the par fives. He was 10th in Saudi, 13th in Qatar this year, has played reasonably well in the States. Maybe not has translated that brilliant rookie form from the Ryder Cup back in 2016 and the 4th place at the Masters into a great resume on the European Tour. But he has won 4 times, and I think he is capable of winning again, Thomas Pieters. And the last one, for those jazz music fans, Jazz Jainwatananond of Thailand, who is out and who is already 1 under par. Nearly won the Irish Open at Galgorm Castle in that weekend field last year, was 2nd in Kenya earlier this year, has won in Singapore, Indonesia and Thailand, has played well on Parkland courses, was tied 2nd going into the final round of the USPGA at Bethpage Black a couple of years ago. I think he will win on the tour. He's a young lad, Jazz, plays with a smile on his face, and I think at 90 to 1, he could be definitely somebody to have an interest in this week. But Rory McIlroy, I think, will win, and I'd be disappointed if he doesn't.
Nice one. Great stuff. So Rory McIlroy, the headline tip at the Irish Open. Are we doing...
Yeah, why not?
As well?
I haven't got the images for these because I don't overload people's brains, but I had a 4th place last week was the headline tip at the Travellers Championship. So I've gone for the Rocket Mortgage Classic in Detroit, and I picked a few familiar faces for this because I do think this is a gettable tournament for me. Doc Redman is the headliner. He is 50 to 1. For 4 each way, was 2nd in this. It was his breakout tournament a couple of years ago for Doc. He's 23 years of age. I think he's going to be a player that will win many tournaments. He won a US Amateur a few years ago. He was a really good amateur, and he's been in the top 10 twice in his last 5 starts. Doc Redman, a really good ball striker, Doc Redman from North Carolina. So Doc Redman is the headliner. The other ones I like, Joaquin Niemann, who's been amazingly consistent. He's only missed 1 cut in 21 on the PGA Tour. Massive hitting Chilean, was the world amateur number 1 for quite a long time. He's only 22 years of age, 2nd in Hawaii twice earlier this year. Niemann has been playing decent enough golf. I think the course suits him. He was 5th there a couple of years ago. Big hitter, will attack it with the wedges and will make a good few birdies. Joaquin Niemann is a 23 to 1 shot. So Redman at 50, Niemann at 23. Ricky Fowler, I don't think you can forget about in the game because he's coming back into form. He's 45 to 1. Ricky Fowler, who was 12th in this last year. And a couple of others, Maverick McNeely, whose dad was behind Sun Microsystems. So without even playing golf, he'd be fabulously rich, Maverick, anyway. But he is 55 to 1 and has been showing glimpses of form and played well. It was in the top 10 in this tournament last year. And the last one was Seamus Power, not having green tinted glasses about the Waterford golfer. Seamus is playing really well in the States at the moment. 3 top 10 20s in a row. Was tied for 4th here at this tournament in Detroit going into the final round last year. I think Seamus Power could win again. He won on the satellite tour and he could win on the main tour, Seamus. And I really hope he does play well this week because he's trying to get his tour card. He's 80 to 1. So Seamus Power, Maverick McNeely, Ricky Fowler, Joaquin Niemann, and then the headliners, Doc Redman.
Nice one, John. Great stuff. Thanks a million for all that.
All right, lads.
It is 8:47 and we're excited to let you know that OTB Sports will be broadcasting full live commentary of all 9 matches from the British and Irish Lions Tour of South Africa. Brian O'Driscoll and Alan Quinlan will be alongside Neil Tracy on commentary for the 3 test matches, with Devon Toner, Niamh Briggs and Jack Carty among the co-commentators for the warm-up games. Up next, it's the Emirates Lions versus the British and Irish Lions on Saturday at 5 o'clock. It is live on News Talk, and our coverage will be brought to you in association with Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. All right, let's also have a look at what we've got on OTB Sports Radio today. From 1 o'clock, we've got OTB Gold with Jack McCaffrey. 3 o'clock sees the history of sport with Paul Rouse. 4 o'clock is a retro panel on dealing with disappointment. And from 6 o'clock is our interview with Nigel Mansell. Now, here is something of a treat for you of a Thursday morning. Something to really get you in the mood for the Hurling Championship if you're not already there. This is Tommy Walsh and his masterclass on the arts of fielding, blocking and turning defence into attack. Enjoy.
OTB AM.
We have got a brilliant hurling treat for you on this Thursday morning. Tommy Walsh, as you can see, is with us. Tommy, how are you getting on?
Great, Eoin. The fans are back, so I'm back. I'm happy out.
You're championship ready.
It was a nice surprise because I think it was supposed to be 2 separate matches in Portlaoise Saturday, and when I was talking to the lads, so listen, I told them I was available Saturday, and just happens then there was a change about an hour later. We're heading to Croker, so 8,000 people. Great excitement around.
It'll feel like the Marathon now with 100,000 people, I'm sure, in that. we were there in Semple last year in front of nobody for that Clare Limerick game, and hurling is one sport that badly needs the fans, isn't it?
It needs the fans. God, it does. And I think even all sports really need fans on. Like, even when you're at training, if it doesn't have to be a full house. It's just, if there's a few people there watching, like in a club ground, you only need maybe 50 or 60 people and the atmosphere is like the Americano, as you said. So, no, it's great to have him back. And like, we were training there only a couple of weeks ago, and two of the, more senior members of the club, Tom Clear and Jim Coogan, they were sitting down underneath the scoreboard, and someone put a few tyres on top of each other. Two great men at the parish. They're retired now at this stage. They have training to go to now. They're there the whole time, every, Tuesday and Friday and the weekend. And even from the players, just looking out at that, nearly bring a tear to your eye. So, no, great to have the fans back. And, you're working hard during the day, working hard. Some guys are on weekend shift work. To have something to look forward to, like, right, there's a match Tuesday or there's a training Friday. It's just great to have that focus. And what I missed most of all was the competition. There's a match, you win, you lose. You're happy, you're disappointed, but there's, emotions and feelings. And, listen, we're coming out of hopefully the lockdowns now, and sport-wise, there's fans coming back to games, and it's a positive for everyone, yeah.
For sure. We wanted to talk a little bit about the different art forms within the overall art form of hurling this morning, Tommy. And for you, what is the highest form of art when it comes to hurling? Because a lot of people have different views on this.
Yeah, you have in all sports, you have players that are competitive. You have players that, will train hard, will do everything that's asked for them. And on the big days, they will turn in, good performances. But then you have the geniuses. These are the guys that just bring the sport to a new level. You look at the darts, and you're looking at the darts, like you have Van Gerwen, you have the power. Like, you get an extra few thousand looking at looking at the sport when there's these geniuses playing. I remember Nate Quinn and Kilkenny used to say that when DJ Carey was playing, when Gore and Young Ireland's, when they were in the county final, to be an extra 15,000 people in it to see DJ Carey. So, it's Messi, Ronaldo. Like, you clue into these games just to see these guys. And, hurling is no different, and it depends, I suppose, if you're a defender or a forward, but probably the highest art form in the game is to be able to win your own ball and put it in the back of the net. I think that's what we all love to see. That's what wins games. Like they say, forwards win games, defences win championships. But if you go back to any of the All-Ireland winning teams over the last couple of years or for the last 100 years, they all are great forwards, and they're all able to win their own ball, and they made the most difficult things. Johan Cruyff always said it. They make the most difficult things look simple, and that's the key. So I think myself, the ability to win your own ball, which can often be misconstrued in the wider circles as determination, as the ability just on the big moment in the big day that you turn up. But it could go back to when you were 4 years of age, learning how to catch a ball. Now, learning how to catch a ball is so much different for a forward and a back, first of all, whether you're in front of your man or behind. It's so much different for a guy that's 5'6" than a guy that's maybe 6'3" or 4. So when you're looking at a game on television and that, there's so many things you wouldn't understand than when you're in the mix yourself. So many decisions. When that ball is coming down, landing on top of you, there's so many decisions going through your head that you have to make in probably, 0.5 of a second.
Is it fair to say that moment right before that ball would come down on top of your head was the moment that you were at your best? That was the area of the game that you felt at your most comfortable?
Yeah, well, that's the ball I loved. Like, I wasn't fast, so the tighter the game was, the better. It was all about reading the game for myself, and obviously getting that ball into a high ball down where it's just maybe one-on-one, and that's where I felt most comfortable. But it was probably that was where I learned the trade from a young lad. Like, you're wondering how to do it. We spend hours and hours and hours from, say, 5-6 years of age practicing catching balls, and you don't have time to think really in the big moments when there's 60,000 or 80,000 people in Croke Park, when there's 100 or 200 people looking at you in Ballyraggett or any of the club grounds. It comes from just years and years of practice, and something that you've done in the training ground, at home, in the garden, that it all just, it's in your subconscious and it just happens. So yeah, I think that's where I definitely was at my most comfortable. When I was in the defence, it's much more difficult, though. I mean, the forwards now, it's much more difficult to catch a ball.
When you talk about those moments when you're 5 or 6, is it just you throwing the ball up to yourself? Is it you and a few family members? How does that look?
Yeah, well, it would have started. Obviously, there was big families. The roads weren't as busy, so your friends and cousins, they were all walking up the road to your house every day of the summer, or Saturdays, Sundays after school. Like, there was probably 10 or 11 of us down in this area, and again, it was just walking up from each other's houses, maybe a half mile or a mile down the road. Cousins being dropped over, and we used to play a game. It was, you'd play either 11 pints, so that you'd have to score goals and pints. So you only had to have 3 people to play these games. So you had 1 on goal, 2 lads out the field, and you played to 11 pints, which was 3-2, or you might play to 8. You might play to 8 pints, which was 2-2, depending on how much time you had left, depending on when dinner was on. So, but you learned everything then, like the goal you hit it out high, you had to be able to win it high. You could be in front of your man, you had to learn how to guide yourself. You had to stop, then you could pull on the ball. Once the ball was there, you could pull on it. So if you put up your hand and left it there, your hand was gone. So you had to learn how to guard your hand,
Yeah.
And all the hurlers back in the 90s and 2000s would clearly identify with that. You had to learn how to guard your hand from the pull from behind. And that wasn't a dirty pull. It was your man just pulling on the ball, batting it down. The low ball that came out, if the goalie hit it out low, you had to battle 50-50 again, how to win that ball. And we also had barbed wire as our sideline. You'd never believe that, but we did. So you had to be able, when the ball went over there, you had to be able to raise it up fast so you didn't get dunked into it. So, you wouldn't have it now. Like, you're thinking of it now, like, it was dangerous enough. But back then we didn't really, you had to keep out the cattle, and that was the main thing,
The Tullaroan Centre of Excellence was a brutal place.
It was, and and then that was the game situation. They're the ones we loved. You love playing games, and you learn the skills throughout the games. The other ones, we had the wall at the back of the house, so you'd be throwing up the ball, jumping off the wall, catching the ball at its highest. Like Christy Ring used to always say that, like, to catch a ball, you had to catch the ball at the highest you could catch it. It just made it much more easier. And then you're say sometimes you'd be down the hurling field and you mightn't have any hurls. You'd be throwing up the ball amongst 10 trying to catch it. So you learn everything in them little games. And like, you often heard Eamon Dunphy, Johnny Giles going back to the street football. Well, this is street hurling really. And like, you spend hours on PlayStation, Xboxes, maybe watching DVDs, watching the computers. Like, they weren't there back then, lucky enough. And you go back to Eamon Dunphy and Giles, they were out for 8 hours practicing on the streets how to play football. You're going to improve, you're going to get better. And it's the very, very same with hurling. Like, you take of it, an under-11 team, if they train 3 times a week, maybe twice a week, that's only 3 hours in the week. For two of these guys out in their gardens every day of the week, so that's, 3 hours a day. That's 15 hours a week. Like, Monday to Friday, take 2 days off. So, yeah, I think the skills game, that's where they're learned, and that's where they have to be owned,
The protecting your hand part that you talked there, is that also muscle memory? Is that something that you just instinctively know what height to have your hurl at? You're defending yourself when you're up in the skies?
Yeah. So as a forward, when you're catching it from the front, the defender is obviously going to come and try and clean, usually man ball everything. But but your hand, you're hoping if you push it on the back, you get it free. So you're guiding the hand. You have to keep it, maybe a foot away from your hand, because if you have the hurl basically is kept like that, going across ways. And if you leave it on your hand, obviously when the defender comes and bats the ball, he's going to bat your hurl hand, so you're just going to get it. So you have to leave it about, maybe a foot away, so that when he does give it, there's that bit of cushion. The hurl will take the impact of the swing from behind, and you'll catch that ball. And it's the way it should be, because the ball in the air has to be fair game, because you have all different sizes of fellas. Some lads mightn't be able to win the ball from behind, so they have to go and bat it. An important part of a half back line is not to let the ball into the full forward line. So sometimes he doesn't want to catch it, he just wants to keep it out in front of him. So that forward has to learn how to protect his hand. Now you're definitely minded a lot more by the referee now, that I'd say even if you did put up your hand to catch it and someone did come down on it, it probably would be a free. But it wasn't always the case. But listen, it's still an important part to defend. Now also, when you're protecting your hand, you have to protect it as a defender. So if a centre forward is trying to do the overhead pull, so he's pulling back through you, so instead of guarding your hand in from behind, you actually have to guard it from the front. And the really good catchers, they're inviting the forward to pull, because when they get the hang of biting their hand there, it's a very simple skill, and all you have to do is stick up the hurl. That will take the impact and the ball just glides into your hand. And so there's so many techniques, I suppose, that looking at it on television, it just looks like he's a good catcher or not, but there's so many different ways. And then, if you might have to stand beside a guy, because if you're smaller, you're not going to be really able to catch a ball from the front, because the big strong defender will just come over you and he'll overpower you. So you'll be trying to come in from the side, and that's where you have to use your timing and your technique to nearly shove him out of the way at the last second. And it mightn't be shove him out of the way 30 yards, it could be only 1 yard, and you're in then swiping, trying to catch the ball. So there's many different techniques that have to be practiced out in that garden.
It sounds like you've, throughout your entire hurling life, marked fellas who are bigger than you, and it sounds like that forced you to think in a different way and essentially become a better hurler.
Yeah, well, say Liam Eoin would be our current manager, and he would have played with my father on the team that won the county final in '94, and Daddy was full back. Cornerback, fullback, he would have been fullback that year, but he was like myself, he would have been smaller, maybe 5'8", 5'9", and Liam Eoin was showing him the two techniques, I suppose, how to stop the bigger full forward catching the ball, because he caught it in there like there's goal on. So that's where I learned it from. Came from my father, passed it on to me, and then you go out and learn your own way then out in the field.
What has happened to this skill over the last little while? Has it got more important? Has it got less important? Or what is the knock-on impact of high fielding as a result of the tactical changes to hurling?
Yeah, it definitely has a major impact on it out around the middle of the park. So it's still very important in the full forward line and full back line, because it can be the winning and losing of a game. If a high ball comes in, you catch the ball laid off or go in and buried in the back of the net, because there still will be lads under pressure. Like the modern game is probably copying Limerick at the moment, where you bring the ball out, short passing, the guy in the best position until you get to midfield. He either shoots over the bar or he's driving into the full forward line. So the ball is still coming long into the full forward line, albeit not as irrationally or that. So it's important in there to catch the ball, because it could be the win and losing of a game. Out around the half back line midfield, it's all like 20, 30 yard short passes. So like you're not really going to be catching 3 or 4 puck outs anymore, whether you're a backer or and then there's extra guys there. So, with all the extra guys funneling back, a defender might just want to, let the ball go through into the spare defender. Like we seen John Conlon last weekend for Clare. This guy spent his whole career up in the forwards, terrorising defences. Yeah. He went back and gave a tour de force, sweeping, as far as I could see anyway, the weekend. So a high ball comes in there. Do you try and catch the ball as a wing back? And, you have a probably 50-50 chance of catching it. Or do you let the ball through in whatever way you have to? So John Conlon is sweeping up. So with the extra defenders back now, it's not as important for you to catch the ball, or even, as I said earlier, to stop the ball going through, because you have a centre back or maybe a spare defender in behind you to win that ball.
Right, that's very interesting. And who would you say is the standard setter at the moment when it comes to high fielding? And then an individual?
TJ. TJ is the greatest I've seen as an all-rounder to catch a ball. So as I said before, it's not as easier, but it is easier to catch the ball as a defender. You're behind your man. You can see everything. There's no one coming at you from behind. As a forward, you have to be able to catch a ball where there's a back kind of hanging out with you at the last. He's shoving you, he's shoving your hurl, he's shoving your hand. He's just really trying to spoil you. And TJ was just magical. He always was and still is. Like, we still see him, even when he's not scoring, he's catching, winning so much ball in the half-hour line. So TJ Reid is the best player I've seen, both as a defender and as a forward to catch a ball.
Right, and he's always got the best man on him as well, which just makes the art even more spectacular when it comes off. The next thing we wanted to talk about, Tommy, is blocking, and we can throw hooking in here as well. So how did 5 or 6 year olds Tommy Walsh practice hooking and blocking?
Yeah, there's a few different, I suppose, I was looking at a few different hooks and blocks that you'd be looking at. You have the close in one, you have the far away one, and then you have the diving block, which is always the most dramatic and the best, and can often win you a championship game. Even if you go to the football, wasn't it Conor Gormley, the diving block in the All-Ireland for Tyrone against that was against Kerry, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not sure, but it was a fantastic. It could have been Armagh. I think it was Armagh. It was a fantastic diving block, and so that's the third version, I suppose, of the block, albeit it's Gaelic football, but it's the very same in the hurling. So JJ Delaney did one in the All-Ireland against Tipperary 2014. His was a diving hook. I'd never seen one of them before, but Callan was gone in on goal, and if you had to bury it, you'd say, listen, there's nothing JJ could do, but he dived. I still don't know how he done it on the day, and it was one of the most, and he still had a lot to do, because when you dive, there's still a technique in trying to get in the hook, and a lot of people do miss that. But yeah, very important skills of the game. When you talk about the close in block, Eoin, that would be where I would leave it to the faster guys. So this is where you get in tight to your man. The guys I would have enjoyed looking at over the years, Wayne Sherlock from Cork. He was a brilliant defender from Blackrock down in the city, and with Cork around, the early 2000s. A fantastic defender, great baller as well, but definitely a great guy to get in tight. And at the last second, he was just flicking that ball away from you. So that's where you keep it in tight. You're strong as well. You're able to stop your man from breaking the tackle and getting away from you. Then he only has, 3 or 4 seconds to throw up the ball. So when he throws up that ball, when Sherlock is getting in a flick or a block. Brian Whelan, another magician, one of the greatest, himself and JJ, the greatest defenders of all time. Just a wizard. Club and county could do it. Centre back could do it. Wing back. He was a rocket as well. Very, very fast. And so he would follow you. And at the last, he'd never foul you. You often hear about the lazy foul. But Brian Whelan would wait at the last second, then in he swipes. So he's in close to his man. Other guys, they're kind of defenders, forwards. I would have rated Colin Fennelly, Aidan Fogarty, Taggy and DJ. I know there's guys from other counties as well, but they're lads I can remember from watching them and playing with them. These guys got in tight yet. They harassed you, followed you to the very last second until you thrown up the ball. Then they got it away. Why do I say that? It's kind of, that's nearly more of a skill for fast guys, because if someone gives you the dummy, the boys were able to get back. And still, he wasn't gone away. If you're slower or, heavy-legged and you try to get in close to your man, he gives you the dummy, suddenly he's gone because you have no comeback. You're marking a faster player, and, you might be better off giving away the point, because if he gives you the dummy and he's gone, there could be a goal chance on. So that's the close-in block. As a young fellow on, how did you do it? We were taught it was called genuflecting. So you got down kind of on one knee and just kept your eye in the ball. The things to watch out for as a young player would be slapping the ground. So we were always don't slap the ground. So that was the guy that didn't look at the ball. He was just going in. He had his eyes closed because he was a bit afraid, as you would be as a youngster, because you haven't been taught yet. And you go in and you close your eyes and you slap the ground. You're supposed to go in, genuflect, keep your eye on the ball and just flick away the ball. And that's the way we were taught as youngsters. Now, it doesn't work like that as you get older, but it is a good starting point, how to block. Then the second one would be the one where you block from farther away on. So that's the one where you have to stand maybe 5 yards off your man. Pádraig Maher from Tipperary, an outstanding blocker from far away. So he'd stand 5 yards off his, he was fit, Pádraig Maher, but he wasn't a rocket. So I'd imagine that was probably part of the reason. He'd let your man maybe 2 or 3 yards off him, keep the hurl up, and then when he throws it up, he'd be blocking him. But to be far away block, the hurl would be maybe, 4 or 5 feet away.
And would he move in when the ball leaves the opponent's hand? Is that it, or does he keep that distance?
Yeah, it depends. I suppose you'd be if you could, when it leaves your hand, to get in, because then you're not going to be dummied at that stage. So it depends on how far you are when you are shadowing him, and depends on probably you're making decisions on the opponent. You're marking as well. What's he going to do? Is he a dummy or not? So if you think he's fairly straightforward, he's going to shoot, you'd probably try and get in that bit closer. But if he's a guy like, we'll say, Eoin and he's as to sell you the dummy, you would be getting in closer. Or you'd be staying further away back.
I presume then that most modern defenders are studying their opponent's better side, whether or not they're likely to dummy, and that sort of level of analysis is done nowadays.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But hurling, I still think it's still an instinctive sport. I think if you think too much about it, so many different things happen in a game. I think if you study it too much like that, you'll just drive yourself mad, and you know,
too fast.
It is too fast. Yeah. And I know in theory it does sound like the best practice, study your opponents, but you could be marking 6 or 7 different guys in a day. And the most important thing I would believe in match day is to be fresh. Listen, you've learned, it's like studying for your leaving cert. You've done all the study, you've done all the training. Now be fresh going in the last few days, and just whatever happens on the day, then you just be ready for it, but be fresh on the day.
Can I ask you about the timing of the hooks? Because you said there that a lot of lads mistime the hook. Sometimes when I'm watching hurling, I see a lad kind of reach in and almost leave his hurl in, and he's almost waiting for the hook to happen as a defender. Is that something you've noticed? Is that best practice? Is that how it should be done? Yeah,
I think I learned that about 5 years ago off DJ Carey. We went up to a camp up the north, or Galway, with Martin Fogarty, and he was showing guys how to hook. And I was there, holy God, I haven't seen this before. So kind of leave the hurl in at hip level, as opposed to you're kind of, managers telling you to work hard on, right? So you're tearing after your man, but you can forget actually why you're there at the end when you do reach your man. It's to actually hook him, not to show everyone that you're working hard. So at the last minute, when you're in that mindset, you're trying to work as hard as you can. At the last minute, then you just throw in the hurl. So you have a less chance of, towards, if you're focused and if you have practiced it and trained for it, you're working hard with the mindset. You keep the hurl in a hip level. So you're trying to leave it in there as opposed to swiping in at the last second. You're trying to leave it in there, kind of, you're overreaching if anything. And as he throws it up, then you're just flicking up, and that's the hook. So now it's easier said than done as well. I said to DJ, there's no point showing me now. I can't catch the lads to hook them now. so you have to be able to catch your man as well. But yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. You have to keep the hurl in hip level roughly, and then you're kind of just swiping up, kind of flicking up such, like to get the hurl. And that, I presume, it's just the timing of that flick then is the real timing. Timing and angle, would you believe? The angle of your hurl has to be right as well. Depends on your opponent, what way he's going to hit it. Difficult to explain, but you're kind of trying to keep your hurl nearly in parallel with his back, and that seems to work best when you're trying to hook a guy. Now, don't hit him in the back. Some lads make that mistake. No, parallel with the back, kind of. But again, it takes plenty of practice. That makes sense. And the other thing then is, I guess, when we talk about the art here of maybe the high fielding of the hook to block, I presume from your perspective, that feels like a goal. Like, especially in a full Croke Park or in a full Nolan Park, those moments of a block or a high piece of high fielding just is an unbelievable feeling as a sportsman. Yeah, no, it is. It is, because it deflates the opposition, especially if it's one of their main players and he has a great chance of a score or a great chance of a goal, and he thinks he's going to put it in the back of the net or over the bar, and out of nowhere you get in a hook or a block. It's heartbreaking for him. And if you can win the secondary ball, then either you or one of your teammates, usually you're so kind of delved in that tackle, that's one of your teammates you're depending on to come in and sweep it up. It's absolutely wonderful. And the crowd, it's just as big, especially if you do them under big players. The crowd really get behind you, and it's like a score. It does seem as well, Tommy, that players, forwards, are much more wise to hooking at the moment, that we're seeing more scores of lads actually just waiting the second for the ball to bounce and then giving the swipe. We're seeing a lot of those scores, I noticed, in the last couple of years. Yeah, this is where you're talking about the forwards hooking their defenders, is it, Eoin? No, the forwards knowing that there's a defender coming to hook them. And instead of pulling because they know that there's a fellow waiting to hook them, they just don't swing. They wait for the hook to almost dissipate, and then they swing after the defender's been left in their wake a small bit. Yeah, no, it is. It's probably to be aware of your surroundings, really. That's what that is. And the better players are getting, the more aware they are. They probably have to be more aware now because, you know, players are gone so fit. Tactically, then there's so much tactics involved in the game. Usually there's 2 or 3 guys after you. So, like, you go back to 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, usually it was you versus your man. You got past your man and you knew, you know, there was a score on. Now you're wondering, is there another defender coming after me? Is there someone else going to get in the last minute hook? So you have to be able to get it off fast. Donal O'Grady was the first that I seen. You know, he trained teams when they were going in on the goal to bat the ball into the net. He spent some time with Cork, obviously winning All Irelands. He spent some time with Limerick when they were going through the transition. And a lot of them guys that time, they were batting the ball into the net, which was rarely seen before that, but definitely an important skill in the game now because guys are gone so fit and fast, they're able to get back. There's no unfit cornerbacks anymore with big bellies that when you get past them, you're gone. So, yeah, no, an important skill of the game.
So we've done the hooking and blocking, we've done the high fielding. The last thing we want to touch on, Tommy, is more, I guess, of a tactical and a mental thing. It's the art of contributing to the attack. Is this something that you had to learn a lot more the older you got?
Yeah, no, lucky enough, it was fairly simple until it only really got going as I left. Like, we're in it, you know, the game evolves all the time on. You go back to Cyril Farrell back in the 80s. He introduced a third man midfielder with Galway, that successful Galway team in the late 80s. Then you go on to the Clare team in the mid 90s. Ger Loughnane and Brian Lohan and Dale and Davy Fitz and the lads, Jamesy, the fitness, they were running up mountains, running up hills in the dark, 6 a.m. train sessions. So they were going to overpower team with their fitness. Then you came to the Kilkenny team. That was all about winning your own ball, being able to win the high balls, hook and block. And that was their, I suppose, philosophy. The Cork team was the running game. So suddenly every team nearly that enjoyed watching Cork was soloing, putting fast midfielders like Tom and Jerry, soloing up the field, hand passing, drawing the man, score. Then you go on to the Waterford team and the Clare team under Davy Fitz with the sweepers. So everyone was doing sweepers. And now, sure, of course, you have the current game, which is the Limerick game. So what seems to happen in our game and in all games, the trend of following the All-Ireland champions. So at the moment in our game, and you know, a lot of the older generation are finding it difficult to watch because it's not as exciting. Yes, there's plenty of scores, but there's very little reasons for a crowd to cheer, bar the score. There's very little one-on-one where a ball comes in and you're wondering if he wins this ball, it's a goal. Or if the defender wins it and drives it down the field, the crowd are on their feet as well because it's danger averted. So the game at the moment is sharp passing out as far as midfield. The game is so light, the ball is so light now, you can hit the ball on the run from about 80 yards over the bar. So you have 2 choices then. If you have space, the Gerard Hegarty's, Tom Morrissey's, they will just glide that ball over the bar from 70, 80 yards on the run, right and left hand, or they'll hit the ball into their full forward line. Danger men like Gillan and, Seamus Flanagan and the lads Peter Casey. So the game at the moment is your cornerback, goalkeeper, wing back, do not drive that ball as far as you can, unless you're clearing it into the full forward line.
It's also kind of a knock-on impact of this is the positioning of players, how you line up on the pitch. Like, I mean, forwards being positioned as half-backs, essentially. Like, this is the next evolution, as you say, something that Limerick have utilised so well that there's, I guess it's just a necessity now. Is it almost less of an art than it would have been during your playing days with Kilkenny? I mean, it'd be where it was almost a rarity for somebody to be getting forward or having that long effort. It's gone from an art form almost to the done thing, the necessary thing if you're a half-back at inter-county level now. Yeah,
I think, like, if a half-back, when you're hurling, tried to score and hit it wide, you could be getting the curly finger 5 minutes later. You had to let the ball into it. That's where the danger was. I think we just have to go through this phase. It's not as exciting. It's definitely not as exciting. But I don't think we'll go down the road that we're going to complain about for the next 5 years. We've seen in Gaelic football, they went through their period for a good couple of years where it was tough to watch. It's now back brilliant to watch again, So I think we just have to go through this phase and enjoy what we have. How difficult is it? It is an art form, would you believe? Because, you have to play it in the club. I'm still playing. So you are playing through these new ways of playing, and it is difficult because you have to give a 30-yard pass. There's loads of lads, you know, in your way. You have to get it over them, underneath them. You have to get it into their hand. It's all balls of hand now. So it is a difficult game to play, and it is an art form, albeit it's different and not as exciting.
And also more bodies between you and your intended target if you're trying to play the pass.
Exactly. And if you decide, say, if you're under pressure and you want to just let the ball into the full forward line, if you don't look, they could have a spare man back there. You know, so if you hit into him, then sure, that's the whole point. You're trying not to do that. That's why you're playing the ball short. You're not just playing it short for a reason. Another thing that many teams mightn't see as well and notice is the reason it's working so successful, I believe, for Limerick is the size of their half-hour line. So I know Kyle Hayes has gone back half-back now, but usually you'll have Gilroy or Tom Morrissey there anyway. And Keane Lynch is no slouch either. Like, you know, he's a ball and muscle. But say if you just take the other two lads, Gilroy Hegarty and Tom Morrissey, so they get a short ball to them guys. So there's loads of bodies in the middle third, but the boys are able to break the tackle. So they get a short pass, they'll break the tackle because they're so strong. You know, they're 6'4", 6'5". They've been in the gym for probably, 7 or 8 years, and they're able to break the tackle and get it in, solo off with it or whatever they have to do. You have a smaller player. You have a 5'10", 5'9" player out half-hour. Try and play the exact same game as Limerick. You give him a sharp pass. If there's two lads on him, they'll just bottle him up. Ball be in it'll be in a huddle then, and everyone will be giving out. Will you get the ball in faster? So I think you still have to judge the game and suit the game to the players you have. Like we've seen Clare, I thought was a master stroke work last weekend. Tony Kelly, we've seen him, out midfield scoring for Ballyhay and for Clare, scoring 7 or 8 points from play, 117, 120, to put them in full forward. So the one place at the moment, if you get good ball in, that you will have space is the full forward line. So they had Tony and the big Aaron Shannon in there as well. So go in a high ball into Aaron, he'd win it, lay it off to Tony or go in himself. Or if they gave it in, so all these corner forwards now, they never stop moving. So they're not just staying at 13, staying at 14, 15. They're moving all the time, waiting for that chance to break. And Tony would be so fast. When the ball did come in, he was always in front of his man. So I'd say if you were to talk to any guy in the full back line at the moment, Eoin, it's an absolute nightmare because you're running after your man all the time, and the ball never comes in 50-50 on anymore. It's coming in because your man won't let it in till he sees the forward out in front. So you have no real chance. So a member of the full back line now has to be a defender. He can't just be a baller.
And then just one last question just on that. Did you, when you were in possession of the ball in the big game, would you hit it knowing that you'd be giving the opposition 50-50, or in that split second, would you try and find the 60-40 in favour of Kilkenny, or like what was the balance there? Could you just not afford to think about it and just get it up the other end of the pitch, or were you looking for that edge?
Yeah, well, we had fantastic ball winners, so sometimes we got a bit of criticism over the just always driving high balls into our forward line, but like I saw that as a 70-31 for us. You hit a high ball into Shefflin, you hit a ball into Richie Power, high ball, even our small lads, Cha Fitzpatrick, Eddie Brennan, they were all fantastic men in the air. That was one of their main attributes. Martin Comerford, he was 6'4", 6'5". So I just felt the high ball that time. Myself, Hoagie, JJ, John Tennyson, John Dalton, we used to lump the balls in high. Probably wasn't, get it in low, spray it around. But the high ball into them guys, sure, that's what they wanted. Once they caught the ball then, it was usually man on man and it was a goal. The only time that we changed was 2011 final. We played Waterford in the semi-final, and one of the Waterford, when we got the ball in the half-back line, the Waterford cornerbacks used to run in. We used to hit the ball into the square that time, and because that's where the danger was. And when we hit the ball in the semi-final, obviously we didn't know, but we used to always hit it to the square, and the Waterford defenders used to just run into the square even when we had the ball. So they knew where it was going. So for the final, we said, well, listen, if Waterford were doing that, Tipperary might do it as well. So then we had to start hitting crossfield balls and spraying it around as opposed to direct route one. So we did change it for that final.
So Kilkenny do tactics is the big revelation from this morning, Tommy.
Say nothing.
Say nothing. Tommy, it has been an education to say the very least. I'm sure people at home will have learned as much as I did over the last little while. It was brilliant. That was the art of hurling as told by Tommy Walsh. High fielding, blocking, hooking and contributing to the attack. Tommy Walsh, enjoy the weekend hurling. It's going to be a brilliant weekend, and enjoy the summer.
Yeah, great stuff, Eoin. Thanks for having me. See ya.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Nah, not those Lions. 3 Lions we can get behind.
And he hoofed it. There's more pressure being ratcheted up with a loss like that, of course.
Just getting the head boxed off, should that just kind of happen?
For all your Lions coverage this summer, download the OTB Sports app.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
Why not check out the Boyle Sports betting app for the latest betting and stats on every player and team with the Boyle Sports Euro Stats Centre. Rated 4.5 stars on the App Store, you'll find all our latest odds and offers for the Euros. So remind us where to go, Stevie G.
Boyle Sports. This is betting.
18 plus, bet responsibly, gamblingcare.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is Thursday morning, so time for our television picks for the weekend ahead. Sue Murphy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, June?
All good. This was supposed to be a Love Island special, but move over Love Island because the Many Saints of Newark is here. This is something that I think we all knew about and we were all looking forward to at the start of last year, and then the pandemic happened, and I presume that's why it's been kicked back to this year.
Yeah, like it's October, so it's just, it feels like everyone has been talking about this for quite a while. And I don't know why I thought it was a series, and then I've just been hugely disappointed that it's a film, because I just think when you get to our age, my age, not your age, and you've seen The Sopranos so many years ago, you're dying for some new Sopranos content. But no, it's a film, and it's Michael Gandolfini, who's James Gandolfini's son, who apparently took everyone by storm when he auditioned for this part, and they didn't think they were going to give it to him because they thought that would have been the obvious choice, and that's not the way the creators or David Chase or anyone working on this series operates. But he's like, I don't know if you've seen the trailer. Yeah. He is like, his mannerisms, he just looks like a young Tony Soprano with hair. I actually got so excited when I watched it. I was like, and the bit where at the end of the trailer where the Alabama 3 music kicks in, you're just like, yes, I'm so ready for this. And I'm not really one of those people, actually. I'm not one of those people who's just like, can go back to a series. I think sometimes leave well enough alone. We don't have to do it again. But I don't know, there's something about this that's just very Sopranos-esque and fits into that world.
Yeah. Definitely. The trailer is out this week, by the way. That's why we're talking about it. And it's the eyes that get me with Michael Gandolfini, just identical. Yeah. And he did a really good interview with Esquire. I think it was a while ago at this point when this was commissioned, basically, and everybody knew he got the part. And he was there in Rome when his father died a few years ago. He was one of the first, I think he was the first person to discover him when he had that heart attack at the age of 51. And prior to that, he had like a flirtation with stage, but nothing major. It was only after his father's death that he actually really picked up acting and kind of dropped playing sports. And he was a bit of a prodigy. He took to it really well. And I'm sure he got all the legs up he needed in terms of contacts. But there's a line in that Esquire piece where his agent was like, God, you're 1 for 1. You may as well pack it in, because he got a part in The Juice on HBO. And that was the first thing he'd auditioned for. And all of a sudden, as you say, he's come along now and taken this by storm. He didn't watch The Sopranos. He's only like after watching it back now, after getting the part, essentially. Isn't it? And he says that there's like a couple of moments where Tony Soprano has very intimate moments with Meadow or with Anthony Jr. And he's kind of like, I can see him talking to Anthony, and it's like he's talking to me. And it's a deeply emotional process for him to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, like unbelievable. And I always love that about those kids, that it's just part of their lives a little bit. Like The Rock has a video up on his channel with his little daughter, and she doesn't realise when they're watching Moana that's him singing. He has no idea. Right. And I love that they're just like, they just take it in their stride. They're like, yeah, my dad's in Moana, whatever. But there's a bit of that. And I don't think, like, it's so sad that he passed away so early, because I think there is a realisation of, wow, my dad was a real legend and really well thought of. So it's a bit, there is a lot of emotion in this, but I think that's what the excitement is. And I think everyone's rooting for him, that kind of way. You want him to do well. So, yeah, it looks really, really good. Really excited.
So October, you're saying?
October 22nd was what That's film release.
That's going to be a long build-up. The trailer out this weekend.
You've loads of time to go back and watch all The Sopranos again, so
good point.
It's not a bad thing.
We do have an episode of The Sopranos coming on. Let's go back to in a couple of weeks' time. Next week, actually, I think we're going to bring that out. So keep your ears pricked for that one. But enough of that. Enough of the crappy television of The Sopranos. It's time for highbrow, high-quality Love Island season, whatever. How's it going, Sue? I haven't tuned in yet.
Like I swear every year, and actually I was talking to Tommy, the producer, last night about this. I swear every year, like, not going to do this. And I was the same with Big Brother. I'm not getting involved. Like, I'm not going to watch it. And then by the second episode, and you're like halfway through the episode, you're like, no, it's still not getting me. And then the last 5 minutes, when they do the teaser for the night before, they just cut off the episode, and you're just like, hook it to my veins. Like, I need this. I need to know what happens. And like, there's nothing massively happened yet. There's a couple. Like, I really like Liberty. I think she is. You just kind of look at her and you're like, oh no, she's just going to get walked all over in this place because she seems really, really sweet. I'm a big fan of Sheahan, who's the Scottish girl who is just like, don't care. This is my opinion about things, and I'm just going to go about it the way I want. None of the guys are all a bit. There's no real personality.
No personality.
Quiet.
Oh my God, you don't say.
I mean, it's hard to believe in Love Island, but yeah, like I felt like this a couple of years ago when I was watching it. I don't know if you've had the same day. I watched the first 2-3 weeks of it before Maura Higgins came in, and I was like about to abandon it, and then Maura came in, and you were like, yes, here we are. We have a queen of Love Island, and they are never going to be able to recreate that. I don't know how they're going to do it.
That's the really interesting thing. Sorry, is that when they do throw in a strong personality, when they do throw in somebody like Maura, who is this unbelievably magnetic force in the villa, to use its technical term, that's when things get turned lopsided, and all those really bland individuals who enjoy being extremely good looking, and that's how they've judged themselves all throughout life. All of a sudden, they're being challenged in maybe a more emotional way. That's when it gets really fascinating.
I know, and that's the thing. I really hope that the producers sit in the background going, what can we do today?
Yeah.
And they just get really excited about how they mess everyone up. But they kind of tried to do it the last. There's a girl called Chloe that's come in, and so everyone had been paired up. Then they bring her in, and then it was like she went on a date with the 5 guys. She was able to pick whichever one she wanted, and one of the girls was going to be single. So that's a bit kind of like, but they were really trying to make her the, oh my God, she's Queen Chloe. And I was like, this is not Maura. And that's what I'm worried about. If I'm just going to be the entire series going, but there's no Maura.
Okay.
But I'll still watch it.
Yeah.
All of it.
There was other incredible moments as well 2 years ago. So there are different ways they'll do it, and I'm sure that eventually we'll all be hooked on it, especially once the Euros finishes up. We'll all have something to do at night time.
Nothing to watch.
What else are we looking at in terms of new and shiny, because it's a busy enough week?
Yeah, like I really thought there wasn't actually a lot out. There isn't a lot new out, but Monsters at Work is the big one for me this week, and I was really excited about this because I love the Monsters Inc. world and Monsters University. I think they're just lovely characters to spend time with, no matter how good or bad the films are. But they've done a series now where I don't know if you know, at the end of the film that they decide that they can't scare kids anymore. They have to make them laugh. And that actually turns out to be not the easiest thing in the world. And for me, it felt like it was a reflection on films in general. It was kind of like, it's not that easy to make people laugh, it's actually quite tough. So there's something really nice. Like, Mike is now heading up the comedy college, and Sully is now taking over as CEO. And it's just charming. That's what it is very much for kids, I think. But again, one of those ones that adults watch and be like, this is grand. Yeah. Like, believe me, I've suffered through Coco Melon, so I understand how hard it can be. But like, when something like this comes along and you're like, oh, I love these characters, and there's the odd joke that's thrown in for adults, it's good. The second episode wasn't as good as the first. I loved the first episode because there's a character in it called Tyler who was basically taken on as a scarer when he gets to Monsters Inc. They've now changed to being the laugh floor. It's not the scare floor anymore, and he's really confused and doesn't know where he fits in. It's kind of his story with the other characters in the background, but still, like, it's just a lovely way to spend time. I think it's about 8 episodes. They're only about 20 minutes each, but it's just lovely. I think it's usually, like I said to you, I don't like going back and revisiting things over and over again, but this actually works.
I'm just Googling Coco Melon here. The parents of Coco Melon are animated in that sort of horrifying animated way.
Terrifying.
Where it's terrifying. That's the only way you can actually sum it
Like
up.
the wheels on the bus, and my daughter goes psycho for it, and I'm like, what is it? What is it about this thing that you like?
What do you see? What do you see in this?
Their scenes something completely different.
Yes, well, that is true. That is how babies tend to work. City on a Hill. What is this?
Do you know what? I love this because Kevin Bacon's in it, and it was actually somebody had sent in a suggestion on Twitter saying, "Have you seen City on a Hill?" And when I saw it, it was a Showtime show, and I went, "Showtime, that could be really hit and miss." And it's executive produced by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, who wanted to make a Boston show, so it is a Boston show. The pilot isn't fantastic, and I was really suffering through the first maybe 40-45 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes, you just go, "Oh, I will watch the next episode now. That's really good." So Kevin Bacon's like this corrupt FBI agent. He's not quiet about being a corrupt FBI agent. He goes around telling everyone how corrupt he is and how he doesn't want to be part of this organisation. He's very entertaining, and he's got the slick back hair and some really nice coats. And that kind of works. And then you have a gangster thing happening on the outside, and you're kind of within the gang and finding out who everyone is within that and how they connect to him. And then there's a lawyer who's played by Aldous Hodge, who's like the good lawyer, and he really wants to like clean up the city, and he had a dad who wasn't nice to him, and like you kind of felt like, oh my God, I've seen this before, and it's very typical kind of character within these kind of FBI shows. But do you know what? Like, got to the last 10 minutes and I was like, I'll definitely watch that. Like, Kevin Bacon is just having the time of his life, and it's actually very like every scene he was in, like me and my husband watched it, and Mick was just like, every scene he's in, I just gotta keep watching him for the entire, like he's so over the top, but it just works. So it's up on the second series is up now on Sky, so there's 2 series of it there. And I definitely think I'm going to keep watching it, but I'm still not quite sure if it's like a guilty pleasure or like a very good series, but it's got some really good reviews, so I'm going to stick with it and see how it goes.
Nice. So that's City on a Hill. We wanted to go back to the Britney docs in case you missed it slot.
Yeah, like I don't know if you've seen the Frame and Britney Spears doc. It was the New York Times. There's another one that's I think it's on Sky now at the moment. Sorry, it's on now and on Sky. It's when I watched it, I was like, this was about 2-3 months ago, and I was like, this just can't be true. Like, they've obviously speculated a lot here about what's going on with Britney Spears. And then her court testimony last week about what her life is like and how much it's controlled by her father, down to what birth control she could use. And you just saw it all play out. And it was honestly like, you felt like it was a film. It just couldn't possibly be true. And it is. Like, she's basically a prisoner in her own home. She's worked some work hours according to her father, who's part of her conservatorship. If you haven't read the statement from her, it's truly shocking. And if you haven't seen the documentary, it's totally worth going back to watch it now, because now in a different light, when she was like, I was really embarrassed about this. I didn't want to talk about this. I'm ashamed about it. Here's where my life is. I'm a 39-year-old woman who can't have a child because I can't come off birth control. It's shocking. It's really like, because you think about like there's guys who run around Hollywood, crash cars, DUIs, beat up women, and nothing happens. And then this woman has one nervous breakdown 13 years ago and is suddenly locked in her home. It's shocking that it's actually a true story. But if you go back and watch the documentary now, I think with the statement side by side, it's a different watch. It's a very different watch, because it's like, oh God, this is actually true. Yeah. So it's very interesting. Well worth a watch.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people as well saying that Chris Crocker was right all along. Like, people used to kind of take the piss out of the whole situation a little bit when it came to leave Britney alone, and it was like, this is this funny thing that everybody can poke fun at. Yeah. And I think this is really helping to change that narrative to be like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. One last thing then, what are you still watching?
Loki. Loki on Disney. I don't know if you've seen it, but you're probably buried in the Euros at the moment. But when you come out of the Euros...
Love Island, sorry.
And Love Island. It's just very enjoyable. And Joe, who works on the show, he was saying that like, you don't have to be a Marvel fan to watch this. Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson have unbelievable on-screen chemistry between the two of them, and it just works because of that. And it's very like, it's 50 minutes long for each episode. It's 6 episodes, and I like, it's a, you know, that thing with Marvel where they just like, the plot line is just overly complicated for absolutely no reason, and they just like get to the jokes, and you're like, get to the joke, get to the line at the end that's going to be really, really funny. And that's why you could spend time with Tom Hiddleston's Loki character. He's just having the crack, and honestly I actually really enjoyed it.
What's that on?
That's on Disney Plus.
Obviously,
yeah.
All right, Sue, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million.
No worries, thank you.
Cheers. That's TV Picks for this week. We'll chat to you again as ever here next Thursday.
OTB AM.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Now, if you missed any of today's show, we had plenty of good stuff. We heard from Sheamus Coleman, we had Nicholas Roche, we had Tommy Walsh, and of course we had Sue Murphy just there on television. You can listen or watch back on the OTB Sports app, on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to the OTB AM podcast and the Off the Ball YouTube channel, and you'll never miss any of our stuff. We are back on air and online from 7 o'clock tonight. This morning we are leaving you with Damien Delaney speaking to Joe Malloy.
It's been good stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think it's been great, to be honest. I think I was talking to lads on the show on Monday morning, and I was saying that, the group stages for me are just kind of, you want to get them over and done with so you can get into the real stuff, and we're at it now. We really are. It's knockout stuff, and everyone seems to be bringing their A games, and there's mistakes are being made, and they're hugely costly, and it's thoroughly enjoyable, and it's only going to get better between here and the final.
So here's your calendar. Friday, 5 o'clock, it's Spain against not the French but the Swiss, so that's at 5 on Friday. Switzerland against Spain, to be followed by 8 o'clock Belgium against Italy, Friday at 8, and then on Saturday 5 o'clock Czech Republic against Denmark, and then 8 o'clock in Rome Ukraine against England, and we have rest days again until semi-finals on Tuesday and Wednesday. So Belgium Italy certainly catches the eye, and I suppose we're all interested in England, whether we want to admit it or not, against Ukraine. 8 o'clock in Rome, their first match away from Wembley, which is something you did feel like Wembley was a major advantage yesterday and has been throughout.
Yeah, it has been. It's you contrast to the Welsh and the problems they had to go through. The fact that they're allowed to have supporters there, they're so used to it. There's obviously players there who played for Tottenham, and it was their home ground for a number of years. So there's certainly a familiarity with it. They're probably based up in St. George's Park there, and then come down and maybe stay at the Grove the night before the game. I think that's what they do. So there's a familiarity, a comfort, a routine that they're all used to. Fans coming back in the stadium, it's all lined up brilliantly for them. I know they've got a big test to go and beat Ukraine, who are no mugs, despite what some people say when they look at them. They're a pretty difficult side to beat. There's nothing special about them, but they just seem to have a way or a style or a belief or something about them that's gotten them this far, and there'll be no pushover for England, especially in Rome.
Because I saw Damien Duff saying he was absolutely certain England would beat them.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of alluding to. On paper, yes, and I see where he's coming from. They shouldn't cause England any problems. They're the type of teams that if this was a Nations League game, I'd agree with him, but they've got this far, and I think I'm right in saying they topped their group as well with Portugal in it. So I'm not sure that I agree with that statement in its entirety, because on paper, yes, but wow, I tell you what, this team just have a way of grinding and digging out, and they don't look the prettiest, and they can just drag the game into the gutter. And if England think they're going to go there and waltz out of Rome with a win into a semi-final, I think they got another thing coming. I think they're going to have a real test on their hands, and luckily, listening to Gareth Southgate, luckily for England, that he seems to have a handle on that and what he's saying, that it's not going to be any cakewalk. So complacency really now is England's only enemy to the final.
Because England have been pretty pragmatic. They're not free-flowing. They're not creating a bunch of chances. They're about keeping things tight at the back. So they're playing almost a lesser version of themselves in Ukraine, and that could get frustrating, especially if they hit 60, 70, 80 minutes and there's no breakthrough.
It could do, but I mean, you and me had a discussion the last number of weeks about has Southgate kind of plotted his way, and has he got a team for every game they're going to play? He left the 3 number 10s on the bench against Germany. I mean, when I saw the team come in, I was thinking, Lord, if he loses this, he'll never be allowed to set foot in England again, because all that kind of attacking or the array of talent that they had, to go and put the team out that he put out, I mean, was gutsy. He obviously had a plan, I suppose a thought process behind it. I tell you, if he lost that game, I mean, he would have been absolutely run out of England, never be allowed back in again.
I'm really glad you framed it that way, because looking at the general reaction before kick-off when the team was named, words like conservative and cowardice were used, and he's afraid. All of these interpretations of the team. And I totally agreed with you. I thought, a bit like the Trippier decision against Croatia, this was an unbelievably brave decision on Southgate's part to go with this team, because he knew full well, and it applied to Trippier the first day out as well, which was a very pressurised game in its own way, that the omissions of Grealish, Foden, Mount, as you say, they would be seized upon. I mean, it would be the easiest Monday morning quarterbacking session of all time for everybody, you know, and it would be very convincing as well. And Southgate would genuinely look, one, incredibly negative, and two, like a bit of a fool. And I don't know, did you see on ITV, I know the match was on BBC, but I was just on ITV's social media channels, he was interviewed by Gabriel Clark, and he said to Clark, and this was about 4 minutes into maybe a 5-6 minute interview, and he didn't make a big deal out of saying it. He didn't say it in very hushed tones or really kind of stare down the camera when he said it. It was more just of an aside. And he said, if I picked that team and that system and we didn't win today, I'm dead. He said, I'm dead. I'm dead is what he said. So in his own way, he knew that this was so risky. It was the opposite of cowardice. I thought it was somebody sticking to their guns brilliantly and saying, I know what I think is right here, and even though the PR of this could be horrific for me, I have to do what I think is right. That was very brave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think his obituary was being written, I think, by a lot of people at half time. I think there was probably the press in England were writing it, absolutely. But he stuck to his beliefs. Whether anyone knew, I'd love to know. Maybe in time we will find out what his thought process was. You know, if England go on and win it, I'm pretty sure there'll be a few commemorative DVDs where everybody sits down.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. You know, every minute of the tournament will be scrutinised and explained by the manager. So maybe one day we might actually get to see what his thought process was. But it was gutsy because he must have known that if I get this wrong or Germany get the nose in front, I have to bring these 3 number 10s off the bench. And maybe that was his line of thinking. But I think to put myself in his shoes and to give maybe some sort of insight into what he was thinking, maybe he felt that Germany weren't the force that they were, and they were a team that potentially capitalised on mistakes. When they got the nose in front, they were quite difficult to peg back. But I suppose if he just sparred with them for long enough, he felt that they had holes that could be poked in them. And obviously, you know, you could get the 3 number 10s on the pitch when they've maybe punched themselves out to an extent. But he probably didn't feel like that if he goes there and he takes the game to Germany and he kind of says, no, we're England. Germany aren't in a good place. We're going to go all out attack here. They could catch them, you know, with a kind of a rabbit punch or something. And maybe once they get their nose in front, panic could ensue and the Germans might go. So he probably just thought, you know what, I'm just going to spar with them and throw a couple of jabs here and there. And then when we get to 60 minutes, we'll reevaluate. And I really feel that once the game is kind of settled, I can get Grealish on the pitch. And I'm pretty sure, well, not pretty sure, but I think that's probably how he drew it up in his head.
And so it worked out perfectly. And so afterwards he's vindicated. And as you said, he had the courage of his convictions. Did you think it was the right plan, though? I mean, you're saying you knew that he'd be in trouble, and you could also see his logic. But that's not to say you agreed with his logic and thought it was the best way to approach the game in advance. What did you think in advance?
In advance, I thought that he would stick his chest up and puff his chest out and just swagger on to Wembley and really just apply pressure on the Germans and go and beat them. But he's been pragmatic in the extreme in this tournament. And I mean, really, really in the extreme. You look at the teams he's picked, the formations. He's not really done that in to my memory. I'm open to correction here, but in the Nations League and in qualifiers, it has been a certain swagger about England, I think, in a lot of their games. So
did you think wrong? Did you think when you saw that 3-4-3, you said to yourself, I know what he's doing here, but did you agree or disagree?
I didn't think anything. I thought I was going to let it play out before I made my decision because it was too difficult to call. I remember thinking, "Oh, that's gutsy." I mean,
but you didn't think to yourself, "Oh no, this is wrong." You thought, "Okay, I see what he's doing here, and let's see."
I half thought this is what he's doing, insofar as he just doesn't want to antagonise the Germans or give them anything. But I just thought, if he gets beat, I mean, it is the worst kind of defeat. I mean, at least if he goes, attacks the Germans and he loses, he can come out and say, well, we went out on our sword. But my God, it was probably the riskiest of risky plays in terms of the outcome that could have been. Listen, fair play to him. I mean, really, really gutsy call. if I'm correct in what I'm saying. That's the only an observation that I can give, really, and I think it's probably not a million miles away from the truth, you know.
Oh no, you're definitely right. I mean, when he leaves out Grealish, Foden, Mount, it's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah. And so when you match up the Germans like that, that's predicated on winning those individual battles then. So clearly he backed Trippier to take care of Gosens. He obviously thought Shaw would do okay against Kimmich. And then he must have felt that Phillips and Rice had the measure of the German midfield. I don't know, would he have anticipated Goretzka playing with Kroos? Maybe he would have thought it was Gundogan. But either way, he must have said to himself, whatever about the craft of someone like Kroos, and be it Gundogan or Goretzka, he must have said, I'm backing the energy of Phillips and Rice there.
Yeah, I think so. But I think it was certainly kind of more built around strength in numbers, because he had 7 defenders. I mean, 7 and then 3 attackers. That's the way he went. And I think he basically just went strength in numbers, that if my midfield players get beat, I've got a back 3. So if one of my centre backs get beat, I've got another 2. You know, my full-backs weren't exactly rip-roaring forward and joining in attacks. They joined in when, but I mean, ultimately it was 7 defenders. Okay. And they just kind of hung in there, but kind of stifled the game and thought, you know what, Harry Kane's going to get a chance, Raheem Sterling's going to get a chance. And if they don't take one of those chances, then I can bring the big guns on after 60 minutes or reevaluate it, you know.
It was kind of surprising then the way Germany cut through them a few times. The Rice fell and Goretzka early on, and then the Werner chance could have totally transformed the complexion of the game, because the other thing about Southgate's plan was it's really not a plan that would have dealt well with going 1-0 down early.
No, but I don't think, not early, no, but I still think that he had ammunition on the bench, that if he did go 1-0 down, and it was 1-0 going into 60 minutes, he was probably prepared to swallow that, so to speak, and then maybe get the big hitters on. But, I mean, it was so risky. I mean, the Muller one even. I mean, the Muller chance is it. But this is what we're talking about. It's so finely balanced, and the margins are way for thin, you know, when you get to this level of football. And this is the beauty about getting knockout football, tournament football, where it's all at stake, and it can switch on a dime, really. It can. And that's where we're at. And unfortunately, managers get paid to make these decisions, split-second decisions. And when they're wrong, they're wrong. There's no coming back. It's not like a league game. We can go, okay, we're playing again Tuesday night or whatever. And, you know, that's the kind of the level we're at. And that's why these managers get paid so much money, because the good ones, you know, the managers can get those decisions right on the spot, really, are the ones that are really sought after.
Where are you and Harry Kane at the moment, then?
I'm really positive for him. You know, with the pragmatic approach they've had, I mean, he's going to be limited. You know, he's going to be stifled. That's probably the wrong word, but he's definitely going to be hindered, I suppose, with especially with the team that he picked the other night. I mean, what kind of service is he getting? What kind of space is he getting? You know, when nobody's getting up to help him, sometimes the balls he's getting, because when you play 7 at the back and you get deep, the ball out up to him isn't a quality, not all the time. It's not always going to be a quality ball. It's going to be up around his neck. It's probably going to be on the side of the defender, where Harry Kane knows I'm going to get absolutely battered here, but I have to go for it. The centre-back's going to come through me, but I need to do my best. Sometimes he's probably competing for headers thinking, I'm not going to win this, but I need to make sure the centre-back doesn't head it 40 yards down on top of my back 4 again, so I just need to jump into him and make life difficult for him. So he's essentially just sacrificing himself up there in the hope that that chance comes along, and it did in the end. So, look, you know, the team isn't set up for him to be top scorer in the tournament, unfortunately, when you look at the way England have gone about it. But he's off the mark now. With the approach moving forward, does he stay the same, Joe? Does he, you know, Ukraine and possibly Denmark and just keep this pragmatic approach all the way to the final and then do the same to Italy? I'm not sure. I can't see him kind of taking the shackles off the minute now and going for it. So it looks like this is the way they're going.
If you're not taking the shackles off against Scotland, you're probably not going to do it now in the knockout stages. So on Kane then, it's not so much that you think he's in really dreadful form. I think we can all agree he's not at his absolute best and sharpest, and there was that chance that fell at his left foot and he took a touch inside and didn't quite happen for him. But it's not that he's on the floor the way people are talking about it. Like Shearer pretty much went for him, I think. First game against Croatia, said way too slow, doesn't look right, looked leggy. And to be fair, he probably did, you know, there's something in that. But even last night, or yesterday, at half-time, Shearer did a piece like looking down at the pitch, aerial view, and showing Harry Kane's lack of movement. Now, what frustrated me as a viewer is it was just one passage of play. Like, I think if you're going to hammer someone like that as a pundit, you're duty bound to show 5 or 6 or 7 examples of when he could have moved and didn't, because then it's a trend, whereas anything could be happening in a single moment. So I thought that I never liked that when it's a one-off moment. But like Shearer's point was really, he's not really doing enough here. He's not moving enough, which seemed like a vague enough kind of.
That's so wrong. I mean, that's wrong on so many levels. I mean, he's up the pitch as a number 9 when he's not having movement. He's got wingers alongside him. That's why Sterling and Saka play, because they're the ones that run in behind. Sometimes they're just saying to him, stay high, stay central, and occupy the 2 centre backs possibly. But like, Harry Kane's never been the most mobile or, you know, fantastically amazing kind of all-action number 9. It's not his nature. He needs bodies around him. He needs runners. He needs people that will come in and occupy the centre-back. Just think what Son does for him at Tottenham in terms of his forward running. He needs bodies around him. He needs chaos almost, but he's up there on his own, and he's not the most mobile of guys. I mean, he can move. He's not immobile, but he's not like Diego Costa where he can, you know, just occupy a back 4 on his own. You know, he's a very, very good centre-forward, but when he's up there on his own, life can be very, very difficult for lots of centre-forwards. The type of centre-forwards like Luis Suarez that can play up front in the number 9 on their own and be okay, I mean, they're extremely, extremely rare to find those guys. Harry Kane needs help, he needs support, he needs service. We haven't even spoken about service. I mean, he just needs runners and balls into him, and he needs a number of chances, like most number 9s do. You know, number 9s that can just take one. And the fact that, you know, you pick out one chance that he missed or whatever, it's like that was his only opportunity in the game. You know, if he had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of those and he wasn't taking those chances, I'd say, yeah, he's not quite right. But Jesus, you know, every centre forward needs help, and he's definitely that type of centre forward. So I'm not in the least bit worried. He's performing his role for the team. You know, how many times before have you seen centre forwards that have been asked to play this role and they throw the toys out the pram and there's carnage and they're not happy because, you know, their marketability isn't going through the roof because they're not the main men anymore. But he's dutifully performing his role, and I think he's doing great, and he's got his goal now, so that's him happy.
Okay. Because even Jermaine Genius, I don't know, did you watch it on the Beeb or not? At one point in the first half was saying, yeah, he needs to work much harder. And I was thinking, it doesn't seem like in Harry Kane's personality to not be working hard against Germany in the knockout stages of the European Championships.
That's not him, but he's not that all. Because when you play with 7 defenders and you're up there on your own, you need to do it all. And that's not what he's used to. Harry Kane, especially his best times really was under Pochettino, where he had like 3 number 10s, Dele Alli, and in front of him, and Son running off him, and you know, 2 midfield players, and Trippier and Walker and Danny Rose bombing up outside him. So there was all sorts of carnage created for him, and then he just filled in his role, and he's a fantastic player. But he's not Costa and he's not Suarez, so to judge him for that is a touch unfair.
A touch unfair. But at the same time, we're not saying he's in the form of his life, I guess.
No, absolutely not. I mean, no, but I mean, I don't think he's been given the stage or the platform to be in that way.
Okay. So how now are we putting England into context in this tournament? Because I was listening to some Talk Sport this morning, radio, and I mean, the England sense of destiny train has left the station, Damien. I mean,
absolutely.
It's on. And they are expectant, to say the least. So, Belgium, Italy, Friday, that's one of those 2 gone, which is very helpful. Yeah. Spain against Switzerland. Curious for your thoughts on Spain. And then I presume, and who knows, predictions will make fools of us all, especially at the moment in this competition, but I presume it's England against Denmark. So say for a second, if we start assuming things, say it's in the next round in the semi-finals, Spain against Italy and then England against Denmark. Only one of Spain or Italy can come through. So if you're English now and you're feeling confident, you're thinking, can we beat Italy in a final? Would that be how you see this thing going?
No, I don't. The lads asked me, on Monday, Sheahan and the lads about, and my prediction was England will beat Germany, and I think they'll lose to Denmark in the semi-final. I mean, that's just going to be the English way. I genuinely think that, you know, England will come up against a team similar to themselves, and Denmark are probably a touch more pragmatic than what England are, and they're used to that. So if you're asking for hypotheticals and predictions, I think that the tournament is Italy's to lose. I think they'll almost certainly get to the final, and I think whoever they come up against in the final is going to find life very, very difficult. But I think England will probably scrape through against Ukraine, and the "it's coming home" balloon will be fully inflated, and they'll come up against Denmark and probably lose 1-0 or lose on penalties, and all will be well again.
suppose the biggest challenge or his biggest positive for me would be his composure under pressure.
Yeah.
And his biggest challenge would potentially be just the tactical decisions in terms of having to overrule your kicker at times, in terms of going for the posts, because we're looking at 2 cup finals, because the third test doesn't matter, as I found out to my cost in 2009 if you're 2-0 down. So they're big moments within the game. But what is remarkably refreshing about Conor is I think his capacity to remain open to learning and to take on new ideas and to get better through potentially challenging periods throughout his career.
And Ronan, how do those on-field decisions tend to be decided? Like, would Murray be able to pull in a few heads and say, what do you think? Should we kick for posts here? Should we kick for touch? Or does he ultimately, as captain, just have to make that decision and there's not much time maybe to bring in?
But even how you make the decision is so interesting, John. The fact that the body language Conor shows without saying anything can install fear, doubt or certitude in the kicker's mind. For example, there's times when you're low on confidence as a kicker, and depending on what your captain says to you, he nearly decides for you, which is ridiculously weak of me to say it, in the fact that this ball is going to go over. But if you get a question of how are you feeling about this, Rog, there's already a little bit of doubt put into your mind, as opposed to take 3, Rog, knock it over. We'll go again from halfway.
Yeah.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved